Good evening. This is a special meeting of the Board of School Directors for Tuesday, August 6th. To the audience, a couple of instructions, and to the participants that are panelists, please make sure you look into the camera when talking instead of looking at yourself. Please eliminate and reduce distractions during the Zoom session by cutting off any messaging applications, ringtones, or applications running on your desktop. Please be aware of your audio and your video settings. Make sure your microphone is muted when not talking and unmuted when you go to speak. If you are using a phone line, *6 is a toggle for mute and unmute, and *9 is for raising your hand. I believe every participant is actually here in the Zoom as a panelist. To the audience, if you did not register in advance to speak, there is no just open call upon the audience to speak. You should have registered per the instructions that were released during the advertisement of the meeting. At this point, I will turn it over to the president and the board secretary.
All right, we're going to call our meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call vote.
Mrs. Deeroff?
Present.
Mrs. Hogan?
Present.
Mrs. Denon?
Mrs. Denon
She is present.
Is present. I didn't see her on the screen.
Yes, she's having
Mrs. Denon, are you
she's
there?
having difficulty logging on. She's having difficulty logging on, but she's in the room.
Okay. Mr. Brophy?
Here.
Ms. Nyman?
I'm here.
Mrs. McWhorter?
Here.
Mr. Updegrove?
Here.
Mr. Hemingway?
Here.
Mr. Foose?
Here.
All present.
Okay, next we will have Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, so the first thing that we have is a previous executive session announcement. So there were two previous executive sessions, one on July 29th, which lasted 2 hours and was on personnel related to the superintendent vacancy. The board also held an executive session on August 4th for 3 hours on personnel, also related to the superintendent vacancy. And that brings us to public comment period number 1. I did receive notification that there were 2 people, one who submitted something in writing and one person who was wishing to speak. So first I'm going to read our statement. On behalf of the Board of School Directors, I would like to welcome you to this meeting. We welcome your attendance and input from stakeholders to assist us with making recommendations and decisions related to the Boyertown Area School District. The procedures and rules for public participation are detailed in BASD Board Policy 006. This document is available at this meeting and on the BASD website. Participants properly registered on the sign-up sheet will be recognized by the presiding officer. This public comment period is limited to topics on tonight's agenda. Participants must preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if that is appropriate. All statements, inquiries, or comments shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually, administrative team members individually, school employees, or members of the public individually. Note that we value and will not compromise the privacy of our students and staff. Please see us outside the realm of a public meeting if you have a concern about an individual staff member or student. If your public comment includes a question, Dr. Bedden or a member of his staff will be in contact with you to confirm your question and provide you with information. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and comment periods are limited to 30 minutes. Individuals may indicate a desire to speak a second time if there is time left in the 30-minute period. Finally, note that we do record our board meetings and committee meetings and we post them on YouTube with a link to our website, on our website. We request that if you do wish to take pictures or record this meeting yourself, that you do so in a non-disruptive and discreet manner and use those materials respectfully and responsibly. Thank you. All right, so first I have a submission from Mr. Neil McKeever. So I will read this on his behalf with that request. Full disclosure, we have 4 students in elementary, middle, and high schools. We are curious if this solution has been adopted or created by the district and have all grade levels been considered for their individual needs and requirements. I support the virtual option in consideration, but I have concerns in the district's ability to implement the technology, training, and immersive learning experience for children. Will the new virtual program leverage Google Classroom? If so, have all teachers received training on how to use this solution, and will there be training for the parents? There was room for improvement with the solution last year. How will science experiments and hands-on activities be handled? Will materials be sent or picked up for use? Will parents or guardians need to purchase these items? How much notice will be given to make this happen? Will parents or guardians have the ability to email their students information that is sent to them and vice versa? Last year, parents and guardians were sent Zoom links that could not be forwarded to students. Links changed on a weekly basis and made it difficult to manage for families with multiple students. How will the video feed be delivered to students? How will this solution be secured? Is the district in a position to meet the technical requirements for this solution? Has a video distribution platform been selected, tested, and staff trained on for the use of the product? Will virtual and in-classroom students interact with one another? How will this cross-platform be managed? Have enough laptops been purchased, prepared, and ready to be delivered to students? What will pickup of the devices for students that do not have devices look like? What accommodations will be made for students that do not have internet or lack sufficient speed and bandwidth? What will projects and group activities look like? How will testing and quizzes be taken to ensure accurate testing results? Will teachers be able to identify in the subject line of this email, in the subject line of their email, the grade and class the message is in regards to? Thank you. And this was provided in writing, so we will ask our administrative team to try to respond to any of these that we don't directly address this evening. The second person who has signed up to speak tonight is Miss Julie Heidrich.
Ms. Heidrich?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can start, and you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Julie Heidrich, and I live in Gilbertsville. I have 2 children in elementary school, and I also work as a nurse practitioner. Part of my job includes overseeing COVID-19 testing. I start my day by signing off on positive cases and have not had a day without positive cases since we started testing. This virus is very serious and still very present within our community. We are not talking about a cold or even influenza. We are talking about a novel virus, which we still have a lot to learn about, especially in the pediatric population. As a healthcare provider and a parent, my biggest concern is the safety and health of every single person who enters the door into a school. Children are not immune to this virus. Montgomery County Department of Health reports on daily number of positives and age ranges. The youngest person to test positive yesterday was 5 months old. The first person to test positive in Gilbertsville was only a year. In the beginning of June, the positive cases in children who live in Montgomery County were doubling faster than the cases in ages 65 and above. Again, children are not immune to this virus. There can be very serious or fatal consequences of this virus. The multi-inflammatory condition, very similar to Kawasaki disease, has occurred in children after contracting COVID-19, which can lead to lifelong cardiac effects. As a nurse practitioner, I cannot clear a child to play sports without cardiac clearance if they have a history of Kawasaki disease, which would be similar to children who experience inflammatory conditions linked to COVID-19. Beyond the children, why aren't we talking about the risk of returning to school, that poses to our teachers, staff, and administration? These adults are at the greatest risk in our schools for complications from COVID-19. One of the elementary schools in BASD has over 700 students. Even if you take away the fifth graders, that leaves over 500 students, which does not include staff entering and exiting the building 5 days a week. The best way to slow the spread and prevent deaths is social distancing and not gathering in large groups. How can we guarantee the safety when we are returning children and adults to situations which will require gathering? From a public health standpoint, the safest option for our students, teachers, staff,
30 seconds remain.
30 seconds.
and the greater community is for everyone to start the school virtually. It's plain and simple. This option puts the health and safety of our entire school district first. I fully realize going back virtually is not an ideal situation for anyone, my family included, but it's the best decision if we truly put the health and safety of everyone who enters a building in our school district first. This would also allow us to have time to evaluate when it's safe to return in person to school. I thank you for your time.
All right, that concludes public comment period number 1. So that will bring us to tonight's program update. And since there's no president's report this evening, I just want to say quickly that board leadership was provided an indication that there was new information that could impact the path that we ultimately decided to choose. We were not provided detailed information. That is the purpose of tonight's meeting. We felt that it was in the best interest to make sure that this update was provided, but this will be the first time outside of being provided the presentation yesterday afternoon for us to review. This will be the first time that we have this information, which is why many of the questions that are being asked, we share, and we look forward to this update and the new information that is being provided.
Mr. President, are you able to see my full screen of the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, excuse me. It feels like the days and times are running together. But just as the president indicated that this is an update based on new information that was provided to the administration. And we believe that the new information is pertinent to making decisions about the opening of school. As always, the two main parts of the work that we're doing when it's aligned with our district goals has to do with ensuring responsible and data-informed use of our resources. And our goal is to provide a positive, safe, and healthy learning environment. These are information sources from previous presentations that I will not go through, but we thought it was important as we're noticing from the communication we're receiving from the community and others that some of our parents and community members have not participated or seen other presentations. We would encourage the community and anyone who's missed previous meetings to go back and look at those presentations. Many of the questions that we are receiving are captured in those presentations. The biggest part of this is that on July 28th, the Board of School Directors did approve the health and safety plan for a scaffold hybrid version. We also want to remind the board and the participants who are viewing that given that this has a dynamic nature about it of the pandemic, that each plan was supposed to be designed to incorporate enough flexibility to adapt to the changing conditions, and conditions continue to change that you will see that we will communicate later in this presentation. But most importantly, we remind everyone that all health and safety plans were designed for us to operate in a green, yellow, and red phase. And the idea is trying to be able to move fluidly based on the changing circumstances that may occur within the community and the school setting. There are really three key points of what CDC had outlined. Lowest risk format was students and teachers engaged in virtually online classes. The more risk, small in-person classes and activities and events, which is what we try to cater our Scaffold hybrid plan towards based on the original feedback when we started that plan, as well as the current conditions that we were given at the time from the state and the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And of course, the highest risk, the full-size in-person classes were discussed that we presented to the board why that was not doable and meeting the mitigation standards that were put before us and still provide a safe, healthy learning environment. One of the things that we concluded every presentation with was this statement. This is and will continue to be an ever-changing process. Every presentation ended with that reminder because we knew that we would be monitoring data and getting up-to-date information. The idea that we were to continue to keep a safety and well-being of our students at the forefront of our decision-making process. So why are we here and what's changed? Is again, the dynamic nature of the pandemic, and each plan is required to incorporate enough flexibility to adapt to changing conditions. So what has changed is that we have increased health and safety concerns that are showing up with the most recent data. Our COVID-19 data is showing a positivity rate of over 5%, which has put Berks County on the state's watch list now. We have human resource capacity growing challenges that we are facing, transportation feedback and the capacity that we are receiving based on the survey results. We have rising mitigation costs with the requests associated with additional PPE equipment. We are also showing an estimated loss of revenue and funds continue to be projected. As everyone has probably watched in the news, the surrounding landscape is changing. We know that in Berks County, Reading, Antietam, and Exeter have gone full virtual. In Montgomery County, approximately 12 of the schools have confirmed to go full virtual, but more importantly, the districts that neighbor and touch us, Springford, Upper Perk Valley, Potts Grove, and Pottstown have also shifted. It does have an impact on Boyertown, whether people realize it or not. Based on the following indication of information that we're going to go through, we believe that we are in dire need of possibly moving to the lower risk category, where teachers and students will need to engage in virtual only classes and activities. Other mitigating factors that we are hearing about is approaching at the beginning of school the Labor Day break, because we know a big salient point that happened with the spike that we have received now as a result of the 4th of July break contributing to it. And then the pending concerns that are being communicated about what happens in the fall with the upcoming flu season. Part of goal number 2, our goal, and one of them is obviously data-driven decisions, and we continue to monitor the community spread. As you can see, the Berks cases continue to rise. And from its lowest point, when we were also up under a 14-day total of the 210 goal, we are at 4,763 cases. We are now almost 500 cases more than then. We have not been at the original 210 target that was used to open since July 17th. We, as of August 4th, had 383 was our previous 14-day total. The new cases continue to rise. Our 14-day total continues to rise. We are plus 183 since being under target. One of the most salient headlines that occurred on July 27th was that the rate of new coronavirus cases continues to rise in Berks County and in Pennsylvania. You talk about data-driven decision-making. One of the metrics that has been used by some organizations in other states, and of course the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, has been the positivity rate, and saying that the positivity rate of 5% or lower for at least 14 days is part of the decision-making process. When you talk about the positivity rate, it is about the total number of COVID-19 tests and then the positive tests out of the total tests, and that'll give you a positivity rate. When we pull the PA Department of Health data and the monitoring dashboard for the state of Pennsylvania, as of July 31st, when it was last updated, it was 4.6% for the most recent 7 days. That was slightly lower than the prior week's positivity rate of 4.7. You're able to also find the current positivity rate for PA at the link that is listed there. You're also able to use the same link, and then you can search and enter in a particular county. Of course, we monitor Berks County, and you'll find that at that time, the positivity rate was 5.6%, an entire 1% over the prior week increase of our positivity rate. It is also 0.6% higher than what they consider an acceptable positivity rate. The PA Department of Health issued this statement: the percent positivity rate is an important metric because it takes into account the total number of positive tests and the total number of tests. Though the number of cases is remaining generally the same, the number of test results to produce those cases are fluctuating wildly as they test on a regular basis and report out. So one of the questions I also posed to a physician is that as winter comes and testing goes up, would the COVID-19 positivity rate go down? The answer I received was that the answer depends upon what is actually going on in the community in terms of the viral spread. Anything under 5%, that physician said, is considered suppression of the virus. It says if you go into the fall under 5%, even with testing increasing, they would expect to see some increase in the daily numbers, but no increase or even a decrease in the positivity rate, assuming that the coronavirus stays suppressed. So that 5% is what is being used as a goal for indicating that the virus is being suppressed or managed. If the virus is spreading through the community, as we have seen in other states, then the positivity rate will go up even in the context of more testing. That was a conversation with Valerie Arkush, who sits in on our Montgomery County side of the district superintendent meetings. I have the pleasure of attending both the meeting with 18 superintendents in Berks County and the 22 superintendents in Montgomery County. As you know, we do not have a health department here, so we also depend a lot on conversations with the health department in Montgomery County. Dr. Arkush is not only a physician, but she also happens to be the chair of the county commissioners in Montgomery County. What's happening in Berks County on August 4th and 5th? Again, our COVID-19 positivity rate is over 5%, so we're added to the watch list. Our weekly positivity rate, which it kind of levels it out and smooths it out, was 5.6. But over the last 2 days, we have had an 8.4% and a 7% positivity rate, meaning that if we continue this trend, we are going to push even higher for our weekly positivity rate. And again, the health department indicated that the percent positive rate is an important metric for us to be looking at. This actually gives you a pictorial reference of the dashboard early warning monitoring system that I spent a great deal of time looking at in the evening and going over. This is what it looks like when you're looking at the state data. And then you can isolate and drill down to the specific county and see everything from confirmed cases, the percent positivity rate, the average daily ventilators, and all kinds of other data to make informed decisions. We currently, as you know, are in the Scaffold hybrid model. These next few slides are just a reminder of where we currently stand, and I'll introduce Mr. Stout as we've done in the past, since I've now reviewed why we're even having this conversation now.
Thank you, Dr. Bedden. I appreciate the background in building, getting to the point of why we are where we are today. Next slide, please. As we think about the reasons for making our choices, we keep coming back to the same statement that the safety and well-being of our students and staff should be the cornerstone of every decision we make. So when we think about that, we just want to remind ourselves of that. Next, please. Many of this information is redundant from previous presentations, but we wanted to just add a note here that the current plan that we have in place is for a scaffolded plan. There was some questions that came from the community about our pre-K program, so I did make sure that I updated our representation to support our pre-K program about what that might look like. So if you look at the top right-hand quadrant, it talks about pre-K through 4 and the implementation of our a scaffolded plan. So next slide, please. Specifically added a pre-K slide, and if in fact we move forward with our pre-K with the scaffolded plan, the pre-K model will model after our schedule that happens within our elementary schools. And currently our pre-K program, we have 3 different sections. We will have an AM session at Bash, we'll have a PM session at Bash like we did last year, and we will also have an AM session at Washington Elementary. So whatever we determine as our overall schedule for the district, pre-K will model very closely with what our elementary school model will be. Next slide, please. Based upon our last meeting, we talked about modifications to our elementary schedule and what we would do to help to look at reducing exposure and looking for cleaning opportunities within our buildings and providing extra time for teacher collaboration and not having our students in on an everyday basis. So some of us internally have called this the 4-in-1 plan, and we talked about in the past face-to-face instruction happening on Monday through Thursday in grades pre-K, added pre-K through grade 6, with day 5, Friday, being a virtual day where students would still follow a schedule, but it would be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning that teachers would still be delivering on those particular days. So this again is just a reminder of where we are today. The proposed school times, we put this slide in from the previous presentation, but what we added this time was the actual student start and student dismissal times at each of our levels. So just to highlight a couple elements here is the student arrival time at the elementary school would be between 8:20, 8:40 a.m. with dismissal being at 3:20. At our middle level and high school level buildings, the times are adjusted as well. The student arrival time would be between 7:20 and 7:40 a.m. and the ultimate student dismissal time at each one of those levels would be 2:35 p.m. at the middle level and high school level. Next slide. There have been questions that have been posed by many people, and we wanted to remind all of our stakeholders within the district that for the past month, we have created a K-12 virtual learning planning team that consists of over 42 teachers that represent different modalities within our district, everywhere from elementary to related services to special education to middle school, high school. And the goals for this team was really to research and identify best practices of online instruction, talk about key online components and practices, as well as planning supports. So we certainly have teachers in our district that are more comfortable with virtual, more so than others, but trying to create templates and planning opportunities for our teachers to have tools that they need to be successful. Develop student supports, talking about the kinds of opportunities we would provide for our students across environments. Talking about creating Boyertown Area School District exemplar online lessons to, again, provide templates so teachers can follow and teachers can have resources. And finally, the collaboration and sharing between grade levels has been a key part of the virtual learning team for our district. Another question that has been posed numerous times by many different stakeholders is concerns for what transpired back in spring of 2020. And we just keep reminding that in spring of 2020, all of us today are sitting right here in the school board room. And I remember like it was yesterday, we got notification and literally had 2.5 hours of time to plan for what was to happen for the duration of that school year. That Friday, I believe it was, our teachers were not allowed to return to classes, nor did we know that we weren't going to be continuing our current practices. So our teachers did not have any of the resources accessible based upon where we were at that particular time. So the conversation that has come up and the questions that have come up is, how is it going to be different in fall? So if you look at the coordinated online teaching and learning platform that we are creating, is that all students, all teachers, students, and staff and parents will have access to all resources. Professional learning will be able to be prioritized. And more importantly, we're going to study what had transpired in the spring to understand where we are and how we continue to move forward for the future. Next slide, please. As reminded in the past presentations, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I certainly, Becca Hester and I have answered a lot of questions. Becca Hester has taken over as, she's one of our instructional coaches within the district, but she's also taken on the responsibilities on a temporary basis for interim online learning coordinator. And I just need to celebrate all the hard work and efforts that she's done, because we have fielded a lot of questions about what this looks like. So we created the comparison information between what our current hybrid model and BASD virtual learning option looks like, as well as what the BOL program would look like for those who would choose to go in that program. And the compare between the left and right side of this template is information that was shared in the past and is also accessible on our website. We are working prior to this meeting tonight, working with team members here within the district. We are working to create even more resources for parents for questions, for Q&As, so that many of the questions that we are getting from parents, and they are certainly justified questions, that we have accessible opportunities to answer them. Next slide, please. As we highlighted in the past, what does virtual learning look like? These are some of the technical supports that would be provided within the classroom. That student support at the bottom, I think, is critical for everybody to think about. We'll talk about that a little bit later, about what we've done to increase our technology capacity within our district. And it's moving towards one-to-one components for our students. And that is a Chromebook, and helping to provide a resource, a device resource, into the hands of all of our students. Next slide, please. Just for the board, there are numerous slides within the next, so many slides of this presentation that are specific to particular areas. I thought the most effective way to continue with the presentation was for me to go over the information, and then at the end of the presentation, obviously, if you have questions with respect to maintenance, transportation, or any of those key areas, that the individual will be available to answer those questions. So from a technology perspective, my department has the opportunity to oversee technology. So quite honestly, I'm excited about this slide, that we have ordered over 2,076 Chromebooks for grades 2 through 5 to put these devices into student hands. I will say, to be completely transparent, as you can imagine, the demand for devices across the Commonwealth and of course other states within the United States is high. So we have ordered them. Our hope is to get them in as soon as possible. Realistically, can we have them before the first day of school? That probably is not able to happen, hence why in our survey, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we wanted to make sure we were able to potentially prioritize to students that don't have access to devices to be able to give them devices. To get into a little logistics, we are moving to one-to-one in K through 10 for Chromebooks. In grades 11 and 12, we're going to let the cycles of leases with Windows-based laptops move through. So in thinking about what's the difference between the Chromebooks for 2 through 5 versus Chromebooks in kindergarten and first grade, we are going to be providing touchscreen Chromebooks for those students in kindergarten and first grade, which could replicate what iPads can produce and provide. So it gives a little more of a tactile kinesthetic opportunity for our students. Additionally, so that we go one-to-one with our kindergartners, we ordered an additional 250 of those touchscreen laptops to move forward for that purpose. We, in the recent weeks, Mr. Iannelli's team, again, a shout out goes to them. They have been distributing Chromebooks across the district and really working diligently to do that for our own students in our middle and high school environments, as well as our BOL students. And as we, last time we met as a team, I believe we met at Middle School West because we had some technology issues, but the technology issues were based upon the actual upgrades. And this board had approved the upgrades in previous board sessions. And really because one of some of our firewall devices it was time to replace them, we just didn't have a chance to proactively do that. So that was a huge project that took place. And the last thing we have on this slide, I think, is super important, and I'm super excited about what Citrix will provide to our district. Citrix presents an environment that is somewhat of it is a remote environment that runs on like a server, and on that particular Citrix environment, students will have the ability to access things like Chief Architect. So our tech department will be able to do that. SolidWorks, Adobe, some of our Microsoft products. And why I say that's super important, and you might ask, what's the big deal? On a Chromebook, you have the ability to log in through the Citrix network to actually access a server that's running software in another area. So we can more efficiently produce, we can more efficiently maintain our environment. So it's, again, a way that we are looking to move forward with technology to support not only our virtual platform, but our brick and mortar platform. The board approved the calendar adjustment for August 24th through August 31st for the start of our students. What this allowed us the opportunity to do, because many questions have come up with family members, some stakeholders within the district about, well, how are we going to train, how are we going to support our teachers to be successful in this platform? So thank you to the board for allowing the opportunity to change the start date of our students by 5 school days. So we in the district have August 19th, August 20th, as well as 5 days starting on August 24th. So it gives us 7 days of professional learning, which is truly unprecedented to help support the building of our BASD virtual learning options, virtual platforms, and some of the areas that'll be focused. And I believe that if I was listening and heard some of the questions by one of the stakeholders from the early part of this meeting, we're going to be working on digital content, access to instructional platforms like Pathblazer and Edgenuity, working with the Google Suite, Google Classroom, Seesaw, Edpuzzle, IXL, which we had access to over the last break. The stakeholder had asked the question about video conferencing. We will continue the use of Zoom and Google Meet. The goal is truly to move to more of a Google Meet platform, because we will be more of a Google district once this transition happens. Also, as everyone can imagine, the county schools themselves have a huge need for professional learning. I reflect back to our own team that we created in a proactive way to support this endeavor, but we have access to BCIU resources and learning modules that have already been created, and we are creating a Boyertown Area School District blended learning website that we're super excited about. As always, collaboration between our professional staff is key, and the other part that we certainly don't want to forget, and really is a priority for the safety and well-being of our students, is that we will be working on training that will be given to our staff within the Boyertown Area School District to support the mitigation and the improvement of safety and mitigation strategies for the return of our students. The next slide, again, questions have come up about what does a virtual learning lesson look like. Mr. John Hagman, super excited, and a shout out goes to him. On a moment's notice, we pulled him into the scene here and asked him to not necessarily give a representation from a visual representation, but thought that we would have him walk you through what a sample lesson would look like at the middle level. We didn't do elementary, we didn't do high school, we picked in the middle. So at this point in time, hopefully we have our audio set up. So Mr. Hagman has about a 2-minute video here that he's going to tell you from a social studies perspective what a virtual lesson might actually look like for our students.
Hello, my name is John Hagman. I teach 6th grade social studies at Middle School East, and I wanted to talk to you about what my virtual lesson would be in my classroom. Each day, I try to welcome the kids into class, but here I'd be saying hello to them on a Zoom lesson. welcome them, ask them how their day was going, what happened in the week, interesting to them. Once we did that, I would put CNN 10 on. I would essentially, on the Zoom, I would flip my screen so they could watch the CNN 10 with me. And it takes about, obviously, 10 minutes. And after the 10 minutes, we would talk about what was interesting in the world going on or interesting topics as a group on the Zoom all at once. At that point, we would try to focus normally on geography or map skills. We would go into the Zoom and I'd have breakout sessions where each of the groups would be maybe 4 to 5 kids in each group. They could work on a PDF that they accessed from my Google Classroom or my Google website. And within those breakout rooms, there might be a person in charge, and they come up with like a group answer for certain questions. Then we get done that breakout session, say about 10 minutes, and we get back together as a group of, say, whatever it is, 24, 25, 30 kids, and we share out what they had learned or what they had found out through the PDFs and packets and things with, again, the geography and map skills. Now they've been on the computer probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes at this point. Might give them a 5 to 7 minute break just to get away from the computer screen, bring them all back, and then we would focus on our actual unit, which is one of the 5 themes of geography. We have videos that go with each lesson. We have Nearpods that go with each lesson. We also have some Quizlets that go with each lesson. So I would have the information in a packet on my screen, and they would have it on their screen as a PDF. I would share the screen to them. They could take notes off of my notes, and then this would build up each day like that until we get to a final assessment. Each day, again, I would probably be looking to about 60 to 70 minutes per class. However, again, there would be natural breaks in there to get them off the computer as much as possible, but yet have me available for any questions and any type of assessments and things at the end. There would be office hours that I would offer of my own time to get a hold of them. I would also be taping my lessons. That way, if someone was sick or missed a lesson, they could just come in and watch it asynchronously. But my goal was to try to make all of my lessons synchronous. I would do the same thing 3 times, taping them all, and I would put those links on my Google website and Google Classroom for easy accessibility for the parents as well as the students in my class. I hope this answers any questions that you have. If you have any more that I can answer for you, please let me know. Thank you.
So one of the things that Mr. Hagman spoke about was Quizlet and Nearpod. Those are 2 virtual resources that allow kids the opportunity to respond. And they're exciting because it's not just the typical paper pencil scenario. It gives them some fun ways to respond and be engaged in the lesson. One element, this is Mr. Hagman's lesson. Teachers can bring their own unique personality to what this lesson may look like moving forward. So again, thank you to Mr. Hagman for giving us a brief overview of what that might look like. Next slide, please. As we engaged in trying to collect data to help support and quantify our decisions, the survey that was sent out by our district was super important to really look at our instructional model preference, our transportation needs, and our technology needs. So the next slide, Dr. Bedden. We had almost 5,000 respondents in our district that we collected data. As you can imagine, Infinite Campus, we were excited about the opportunity Infinite Campus provided us to be, again, completely transparent. We can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure your information is updated in Infinite Campus, because if your information is not updated in Infinite Campus, it does not allow you the opportunity to participate in surveys and things such as this. It's directly connected to your account. So making sure that you have that connection is super critical to make sure communication can stay up. So again, almost 5,000 respondents. Next slide, Dr. Bedden. This is a little difficult to see, and I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time, but what we wanted to do was really break apart our data. And a shout out goes to the Office of Teaching and Learning, specifically Jen Joyce from Cindy Bartholomew and Lisa Shade from Pupil Services and Technology, extracting the data. And then this was a spreadsheet with over 5,000 respondents. And it was compiled today to really show all of our buildings and what parents chose as their potential learning opportunities for the upcoming school year. And I'm not going to spend time going over them, but the first column is the BASD virtual program. That was a new program that we presented a couple weeks ago. The next column is for Berks Online Learning. How many respondents would be looking for that? We also wanted to collect data for how many families within the Boyertown Area School District right now would be considering an outside cyber opportunity. And finally, the last column is how many parents would be looking to homeschool their students. So again, I'll give you a minute just to kind of glance over that before we click forward, because I know for all of the people that are watching, you might be more inclined to be looking at your building that represents where your kids might be. We also obviously collected the same information from our middle level environments. The top grid is from Middle School East, and the second grid is from Middle School West. Again, the totals are at the bottom of each column. And then on our last slide, we have our BASH, our high school, and we collected the information here, and you can see the numbers that total there for the senior high. We took all those totals and put them together and put them at the bottom of this slide. So at this particular time, as of about 10 o'clock this morning, because we did open up the survey again, just because there have been families that needed to still give information. And I need to remind all of our families, because we received a lot of questions about this. This was for prediction purposes, trying to get a sense of what our overall numbers would look like. It does not lock you in. It just gave you ideas of gave us ideas of what we should expect. So there will be practices in place if this is the model that we move forward with to verify what that information looks like. But I think looking at those bottom numbers is a critical scenario here to look at the Boyertown Area School District virtual. We have 449 students that would be interested in going that direction, 208 students for Berks Online Learning. Critical number. Other cyber, looking for outside cyber entities that certainly would incur a cost to the Boyertown Area School District is 81. And our homeschool, the families that would look to homeschool would be 16. So Dr. Bedden in a previous presentation had shared some information about the cost, about how much at the basically low end of what it might cost or the district would lose in funding for each student. And we project that would be approximately $12,500 for a student in regular education. It could be in excess of $30,000 per student if they have an IEP or have special education needs. So if you multiply 81 students times the
27,000 was the average for special ed.
27,000 was the average for special ed. So if you multiply the 81 times the 12,500 per student, and we just did the low end, it's almost $1.1 million that the district could potentially lose for these families and having their students be supported with outside cyber entities.
And that's in addition to, we already paid the 2.5 million a year. So that 1 million, if they were on the low end, the 2.2 on the top end would be in addition to the already 2.5 million we currently spend on cyber charter.
Thank you, Dr. B. So the next slides, if you continue forward, Dr. Bedden, are our proposals. And again, I go back to our reminder about our safety and our well-being of our students and staff should be the cornerstone of every decision that we make. So we collected information from different specialized areas within our district. So go ahead, Dr. Bedden. The visual that we created to give you a representation of what this looks like is somewhat of an arrow format that, and we color coordinated this with where we are looking at those risk models that Dr. Ben had made reference to, full virtual, to our scaffolded transition, to our full return to school. And I just ask you to kind of remember this slide in the back of your mind so that when we come back to it at the tail end of the presentation, it maybe has a little more context. Next slide, please.
I do want to touch into a question that was asked by one of the board members and some confusion in the audience. Again, the health and safety plan was required to be developed so that we could function between full virtual, the middle piece being kind of the yellow-green status, and then of course fully return to school. At some point in this process, what would help the district be able to make those determinations is the board spend time adopting and agreeing upon what type of metrics they're going to use to make that decision if the state does not indicate a change. Originally, when those plans were rolled out with instructions, the red, yellow, green standards were developed by the state. Now the state has shifted to obviously a lot more local decision-making in that process. So it's going to be very important for the board to at some point identify the key metrics that they're going to be expected to use in order for the local level flavor of what determines when you're in a red status or a yellow and green status in the health and safety plan. The health and safety plan that you voted on had an instructional model already selected in it, but you now, in the absence of a state intervention, it really would be important for the school board to say, these are the metrics we want our district to follow to determine at the local level, in the absence of state giving direction of how you're going to move between the statuses of red, yellow, and green status at the local level in the absence of state decision-making from the original design of the health and safety plan.
So the rationale that was created for our new proposal, to Dr. Ben's point, and the matrix and how we make the decisions that we make, all of these bullets are a representation of making the decision and the recommendation that's before you tonight. Again, I don't need to read all these, but CDC, just going to give highlights, info from Berks and Montgomery. We're going to give you information from operations, transportations, human resources, and a collaboration with the Education Association of Boyertown Area School District, and a data collection point survey that was taken for all of our teachers within the Boyertown Area School District. So the transportation update, and again, I'm going to go through this information, and at the very end, Mrs. Batten is on the Zoom session. So if there are specific questions that are related to transportation, please remember them, write them down, and then we can come back to them. But ultimately, that we had sent a letter out a week or so ago, and as we predicted, the letter itself would create some questions for our parents within the school district. So some of the data points in there was really trying to do the best we can to maintain 2 students, if possible, less than 2 students per seat, but there's opportunities that we may have to have 3 students per seat. We talked about how masks will be required to be worn on all vehicles, how the increased cleaning and disinfecting, strategic seating, loading, unloading, and also the opportunity for parents to be responsible, to be taking temperatures and having students wash and sanitize their hands before leaving for the bus stop. The transportation information here that was, again, feedback from the letter that was given, and I'm just going to look at the highlights that are in red. Parents were very concerned that, the minimum of 2 students per seat on the bus. We also have information that if we truly maintain social distancing on our buses, on a 72 passenger school bus, that if we maintain social distancing, it would only allow 12 students on a full-size bus. We would need 4 times the amount of vehicles and 4 times the amount of drivers to accommodate. And the financial burden and the cost that would be behind that could be catastrophic to the district.
We currently spend about $5 to $6 million a year on transportation. It is one of our highest cost items outside of personnel and compensation and benefits.
You'll hear a little bit from human resources data in a few slides, but one key component to this transportation scenario is that our bus drivers, and whether or not their willingness and ability to come back to feel safe in riding their buses based upon the potential exposure to the virus. And for, as we have discussed many times in this, in the board sessions, we already have a pretty significant shortage of bus drivers within our district, and that may actually increase the shortage of bus drivers. Next slide, please. From our facilities and operations update, Mr. Drescher, and again, a celebration shout out goes to all the hard work and tireless hours that are going on with the maintenance department. But they've already spent over $7,000 to build barriers to help maintain safety with our offices, nurses' suites. They're about 85% completed with that. Teachers' desks, if we kept continuing with the plan to provide more safe opportunities, that could be additional cost of $20,000. And really looking at the time behind this and the cleaning and all of these scenarios that would try to help to provide supports to mitigate could be upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 per week to clean and provide the supports required. Additional hand sanitizer dispensers for our classrooms that don't have sinks and cafeteria entrances being used by students and staff. We have currently, as you can imagine, the demand for these particular products has increased incredibly. We have gotten our stash of those resources. The current cost for that was around $6,800. And one of the concerns moving forward, as we have all learned, although we go to the grocery store and certainly some of the products that might not have been as plentiful earlier seem to be, but the concern from all of the county school facilities and operations people is that they really might have a difficult time getting these materials, and some of them might not be available until maybe even after the Christmas break to supplement what we've already used. Next slide, please. Again, more information from our facilities and operations. We are fully staffed except for one position within the district. We do have currently 3 sub-custodians that can be utilized in case the event of one of our custodians calls off. But as you can imagine, if we would have some individuals that would be unable to return to work, the substitute scenario is a shortage as well. So if somebody needed to be quarantined for 14 days and would not be able to return to work for different reasons, we could have a shortage within our cleaning staff, which then would have a direct impact of what we would do in our buildings to maintain the safety for our students and staff. And really the pace at which our custodians and maintenance staff would have to move to support these cleaning mitigation strategies would be constant, and it would be almost nonstop, and it may be very difficult to maintain. Next slide, please. Human resources, again, something to, if you have questions about some of our human resources informational data points here, Mrs. Richard is on the Zoom session as well. But currently, moving into this school year, we had approximately 12 teachers apply for various types of leaves. And they're outlined there, anything from medical to maternity, child rearing, sabbaticals. So we had 12 teachers moving into this year that we were going to be down. That, of course, we typically put substitutes in for, but that's where our school year started. Some of those leaves were for the duration of the school year, and some of them were for a shorter period of time. And a key element to really focus on here is that the 12 teachers really hit many areas within our instructional practices within our school district. As you well know, through the hiring processes within our district, some positions are a little easier to fill. Special education, science, math, English, speech and language, which we call those related services in the special education field, psychologists and elementary are all assignments that needed to be looked at to be supported to be replaced. As we move forward to the next slide, very key data point to look at that first bullet. Our Human Resources Office has received inquiries or plans to meet with 27 teachers as of August 3rd, 2020, with specific concerns about the return to school. These teacher assignments, as discussed in the previous slide, pretty much span all of our supports within the Boyertown Area School District, everything from special education to specific content areas to special areas, elementary to secondary. And as in the previous slide, some of the conversations are for shorter term, some of them are for longer term opportunities to not come back to us for the school year. They are a combination of medical health concerns, maternity, FMLA, uncompensated leave, sabbatical or compensated leave, or COVID cases. Those are all areas. And if you add up the 12 who had already applied that were coming into this year and the 27 as a touch point as of August 3rd, it gives us a total of 39 total teaching positions that may have to be addressed in some capacity depending on what we're doing. Next slide, please. At this particular time, I'm going to pass the next few slides on to Mike Ludwig. Mike Ludwig is going to represent the Boyertown Education Association and the information that they collected from all, or provided the opportunity to collect from all of our teachers within the Boyertown Area School District, and the information that was compiled to just give you some background in data points that were from our staff. So Mr. Ludwig, you are on.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Let me begin by saying thank you to the administration. It's been really nice to see the administration working with the professional staff on such a sensitive but really important topic. And we appreciate the collaboration that's gone on with both parties. Many of you probably know, but some of you might not. I am also a coach in the district. I've been coaching for a lot of years. And one of the terms that I always use with my teams is the term of interdependent. Interdependent means that we are all working together, but we count on each other to get the job done. And this has been a true interdependent effort to talk through a lot of these issues that are very, very sensitive. So I wanted to thank the administration for doing that. The survey came about because there were some questions that came to us through after the July 28th board meeting that we just didn't feel comfortable answering for the professional staff until we took their pulse. And the survey was sent out to the professional staff on July 29th. Next slide, please. In the survey, you will see this is a representation of the cross sections of respondents. Just so you know, the survey itself was actually only posted for 24 hours, maybe a little bit less than that, because of the time sensitivity of everything that's been happening. We have collected other data, but I'm using the data points that we collected in a very short period of time. In that 24 hours, over 352 people responded, which was a large portion of the professional staff. On a side note, if you look at this long enough, which Mr. Stout has, Dr. Bedden has, it looks like Pennsylvania, doesn't it? So I kind of thought that was interesting. So next slide, please. In this slide, it talks to how people are feeling about COVID-19 and will it affect their personal health or their family's health. If you look at this, you'll see that with our 352 respondents, 80% were down at the very concerned area of the diagram. So we go from 10 all the way down to the highest number of 187 professional staff that are very concerned. And we need to understand that that's not always about the student in the room or the teacher in the room. Sometimes it's about what's going on at home. And sometimes it's hard to realize all those little intricate things that are happening in the staff, professional staff's person's life, but also the kids' lives. And who are they going home to? And it's something that is very concerning to our people. So next slide, please. When I look at this slide, it's talking about a previous survey that we did where 92% of the respondents indicated that the health and safety of students and staff should be the primary thing that BAEA is focused on in helping to prioritize things moving forward. We asked the same question It was worded the same way in this survey, and it actually jumped up to 99.7% indicated that. And I will tell you the one indicator, that person said that's really important too, but just added a little bit more about making sure that the kids got the best quality education. And I think it's important to note that as a professional person, we are all extremely excited to provide the best education we can for your kids, whether it's remotely, through a virtual program, or in person, or as we go through a timeline, we're all back in school together. So that is our goal. And I know Mr. Stout has talked about it a lot. It's not what happened in the spring. And we are prepared and we are ready to go and excited about providing new learning opportunities. Next slide, please. This slide takes a look at the scaffolding reopening plan and looks at some data points related to that. Just a couple things to highlight with this. If you look at the blue segment, 28.1%, that's 28.1% of the respondents felt very comfortable with returning to work under that scenario. If you take the 59.4 and the 12.5% and you add those together, you're right around 80% felt uncomfortable. The red definitely says, yes, I would return, but I'm uncomfortable. But I think it's important to look at the orange, which goes back to Mr. Stout's discussion with where HR is right now. 12.5% feel uncomfortable and would consider some type of retirement, some type of leave, some type of where they're involved with what's going on with what the government is offering. So that's a lot of people. Just to give you an idea, 12.5% of 500 is 65 people. So I know that Mr. Stout said 27 and 12, which got him to 39, I think, Mr. Stout. Mm-hmm. And it actually could be higher than that if that's where we go. And that's a concern. And I think the concern is that professional staff have a lot of things going on. And it's all the extra things that are, the safety and risks, it just might not be worth it, which are decisions that people have to make. Next slide, please. In this slide, this just goes to a question that we asked just for the purposes of collecting data. If we were to go to a full return, which at one point was discussed, certainly doesn't seem like that's the direction that it might be prudent to go at this point. But you can see, I'm just going to focus on the orange number because that's the I am uncomfortable returning to work. Under this scenario, we consider retirement, leave, or some other way of getting, working through this issue. That's over 111 people in our professional staff. That's a significant number, and it's just something I think we need to be aware of. And then next slide, please. In this final slide that you see related with the pie charts, you can see this asks if we went to a full virtual return. And the professional staff indicating that 77.3% are now feeling comfortable returning. There's still 21% that are uncomfortable. And there could be a lot of reasons why that is. There are some of our members that have very serious personal health concerns, whether it's for themselves or a family member. And it's something we have to be aware of those situations. But if you see the orange part of the pie drops all the way down, and now that's only at 1.9%. So again, maybe some of those issues that are being taken to HR aren't issues. And the professional staff we don't need to look at replacing some of those people from an HR department. Okay. So next slide, please. I think that might be it. Okay. Oh, sorry. One more thing. I just wanted to indicate, if we go back one slide, Dr. Bedden. Thank you. I just would like to indicate that we understand that ultimately this is the school board's decision, and it's a huge decision. There's a lot of factors to take into consideration, and there's a lot of data points that you're dealing with and trying to figure out how to, create the best possible solution. No, as a professional staff, we are extremely excited and eager to get back to work providing the best education we can for the students of Boyertown. It's something we've taken pride in for years. But the health and safety of our staff and students has to be the number one priority. And that goes to the bigger community of Boyertown. Because while in the classroom, it's the teacher and the students, every one of those kids and the teachers are leaving and going back to their families and being a part of this community. We know how this virus spreads. We know how contagious it is. And we're just concerned that we need to make sure we keep the safety of the entire community in mind. So thank you again. We're looking forward to the opportunity to educate the students very quickly here and getting ourselves going in a very positive direction. So Mr. Stout, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ludwig. Dr. Ben, next slide, please. Other considerations that were taken into place as to what our revised plan would look like. Next slide, please. And these are all preliminary discussions for how we would provide supports in special education. We talked about even with a virtual environment for our majority of our students, the possibility for our low incidence populations, and I put out the term for those of you that understand the extended school year program with our special education support, perhaps some of those students that qualify for the extended school year program, just for purposes of giving you kind of a comparative, that would still potentially be able to be provided supports in the brick and mortar environment, and we would have a much easier time to support them from the health and safety and provide them the critical supports that they need. And also potentially students who receive direct instruction type programs and bringing them back to our brick and mortar environment to help support them during this time. We also would be able to still continue to bring students into the buildings to complete their needed evaluations to determine their eligibility for special education services. Also, the opportunity for students to receive their related services. And in an IEP, a related service is something that is like speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, hearing support or visual support that could be provided, that students could still be accessing that supports in the building. And I also wanted to say, which I don't know if I made a point of it earlier, in our proposal for a full virtual scenario, we would be asking our teachers to come back and be working from their classrooms. So to all of the supports that the teachers have access to within their building environment makes me think about our special education and the very specialized supports that some of our students require. They would be able to have access to those supports within those classrooms. And finally, we would still be holding IEP meetings and progress monitoring and participating in a combination of virtual scenarios as well as some of those face-to-face when necessitated. Some of the questions that came about, well, what might things look like? We have kind of talked through some of our secondary environments with our administrative team, as well as the virtual learning team and some of our subcommittees. And there's possibilities that really provide us more flexibility to meet the needs of our students. Looking at what would be the most effective way to do a seamless transition between a virtual environment to back to a brick and mortar environment. There could be consideration for, in the transition, to later start shorter day times, depending on what the prioritization would be. We would be able to potentially have more teacher collaboration. We would also be looking at a scenario where we could look at, for instance, maybe at the high school level, where we might go into more of a longer term. So instead of having eight or nine opportunities where students need to log into their computer for different periods, maybe we would double the length of those periods and provide less times to log in, so our students would have less transitions and be able to be a little more efficient in the time that we use and do some alternating schedules. We are really working behind the scenes to think about how can we look at the best way to support our kids now so that when we ultimately move towards a transition, we can make that as efficient and as effective as possible. And no matter what this looks like, I will say this over and over again from a virtual perspective, it's not a student sitting at a computer. If I have a 40-minute period, if I have an hour-long period or whatever it might be, it's not sitting in front of a computer and looking at the teacher talking at me the whole time. It is a combination of some small group kinds of scenarios, some very short mini lesson scenarios, and then doing activities that are related to the lesson. So it does provide the opportunity to embed breaks throughout the virtual experience for both students and staff. Next slide, please. So the final recommendation, and just going back to what Mr. Ludwig said, I want to reiterate the fact of there is not one person that's sitting in this boardroom, that's sitting on the administration team, that's sitting as a classroom teacher, as a related service, as a support personnel, anyone in our district, stakeholder-wise, that predicted we would be in the environment and situation that we're in. But the news flash for everyone is that we're in it and that we are in this together. And I can't emphasize the importance of working collaboratively to make a decision that is the most efficient decision at this particular time with the information that we have been provided to do what is most effective and supportive of meeting the health and safety and well-being of our staff and students. So again, thank you to everyone who has spent tireless hours coming together to propose, to really think about evaluating where we are to help plan for the future. So the statement that we want to come together for a final recommendation tonight, and I will read this word for word, is while keeping the safety and well-being of our students and staff at the forefront of our decision-making process, and based upon the updated data/information, the Boyertown Area School District Administration, in collaboration with the BAEA, recommends a full virtual start for the first 9 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year. Next slide, please. You might say, okay, well, what does that mean moving forward? So as I reminded you earlier in the presentation to remember that visual, because we bring back the visual to be a representation of what we would be looking at moving forward. So our full virtual 9 weeks would be looking at starting with our students. Remember, our staff would be starting on really August 19th and August 20th, and then for the week of August 24th for professional learning. A full virtual plan for our students in place from August 31st through October 30th, which is 9 weeks. During that time, we will be spending tireless hours again, evaluating data, looking at all of the key indicators that Dr. Bedden presented, as well as all of the other scenarios to maintain the health and safety of our students. But by doing this at this particular time and providing those 9 weeks, we could potentially transition students back and be doing it in a more efficient and safe way to meet the needs, because the ongoing assessment of those health and safety factors will be continued to be monitored and be evaluated to move towards what would be that transition plan to get our students back in school. I sit before you today and I completely, wholeheartedly agree that I wish that I could sit here and say that coming back to a brick and mortar environment is, that's what we all want to do. We want to all return to normal. We all don't want to wear masks. We all want to go back to what normal is. But in reality, we have to be faced with decisions based upon the data that we have today. So in those 9 weeks, we would be supporting our students virtually, prioritizing keeping that green status that Dr. Bedden referred to in the previous slide, and be moving to what was the plan of transitioning back based upon the new data as we move forward with the numbers. Dr. Ben, next slide, please. And with that being said, I'd like to conclude the presentation tonight, and I thank everyone for the time coming together to bring the data and the supports that we would like to continue moving forward with.
Thank you for the presentation. That brings us to the board comment section of tonight's meeting. So I will scan the room as well as for those that are currently on Zoom, and we'll start putting people in the queue. Anyone like to make any comments, ask questions? What was presented? I see Mr. Brophy with his hand up first. We'll go with Mr. Brophy, and I will continue to look to see who else wants to get in the queue.
Well, I'm not going to argue against a very long presentation, obviously skewed in one direction to push the board toward a virtual opening. I'm kind of disappointed with that. Also, surveys that were written in such a way that it would push toward a virtual opening. Those things kind of disturb me. Could you go back to the arrows, please, Mr. Estelle?
I can barely hear what he's saying.
Yeah, Dr. Ben, he requested going back to Mr. Brophy, the arrows with the written component underneath.
Just the arrows for virtual to transition. The last slide that you looked at.
Do you hear that, Dr. Ben?
Okay. What color is this state in right now? What color is this area? Are we red?
It is red.
This section of the state's red.
It shows red.
No, the state itself. From Wolf's red, green, yellow.
As I said before, unfortunately, we're not getting direction based on the coding anymore from the state. That's the issue. That's why it's important.
But that's what we based everything on going forward. Red, yellow, green, and real green. So here we are. We put together a plan that we gave to the public 10 days ago so that they could start making their plans for their lives and their kids' lives based on a plan that met all the CDC requirements. It put social distancing and everything else in there for all the safety required that we could possibly give. And now we're telling the parents we're only kidding. We didn't mean it. I just can't turn around 10 days later and say, forget what we told you, now we're going to change it. I just can't do that. It's not there.
Mr. President, may I respond?
Yeah, please do.
And I'm going to say this with all sincerity and with as best respect as I can. One of the things that is disturbing in this whole process is the continual piecemealing of information taken out of context. One of the things that we have continually said that's also part of the plan is that we have to be responsive to the fluidity of the data. The plan actually says that. So again, it is the board's decision. But I do know that when the staff brought this new information and shared it, and where we are, we're responding to that and sharing it with the board for their ultimate decision. But I want to be clear that it never was presented as a plan that you just pick something and stay there. It says specifically in it, and I will say this publicly, I'm concerned that when we put out a lot of information, how often it's not read and used in the process and the conversation. What we're saying is things have changed. Our numbers are trending up. Our data is showing that we have a problem. But more importantly, what we're saying is we may not be able to meet the plan with the new information that was brought to us regarding, I'm trying to find it, our staffing challenges. That, by the way, it is a big reason why many of the school districts are changing. We will have potentially a significantly unsafe situation because of the lack of drivers to transport students, because of the lack of staff that we may not be able to place. 39 teachers. Some districts are hitting 50 and 100 teachers already. We won't be able to get subs. We do not believe that we will be able to get subs. So no matter how much we want to make it work, this is a key factor that we're facing with regards to 39 teachers potentially, and it could grow. And by the way, special ed, science, math, speech, and language are also very difficult to find people in. So it's not that we just wanted to flip and make a change. It's because we were shared, as the association said, we asked questions about our capacity to deliver. They got answers and shared it with us, and it created a real concern that if we are not able to deliver the service because we have staffing concerns, it doesn't matter what plan we put forward. And the fact that we are, and I just looked it up, we're at 5.7 now. 7-day trend on positivity rate. Again, with 7 and 8.4. And we went up again back to 383. They just sent and came in through email the latest count. We are actually trending in the opposite direction from many other counties. We're not the only district that's had to pivot. That has been the common theme of everything with this situation with the disease. It does not stay stagnant, and things will continue to change on us. So it is not something that we're saying we planned for 10 days ago to make a change. And I just want that to be clear. But I do know that it is our responsibility to make sure that the current health and safety data, the current staffing challenges that we are now aware of that potentially we're facing, is going to make it even that much more difficult to implement the mitigation strategies and also meet the needs in a safe manner. That is really the overarching theme. Ultimately, the board decides, but I don't want anyone to think that we just sat here as an administration and decided we wanted to change. But I do want to be clear. We have over and over again said, this is a constant fluid situation that we have to be able to respond to.
In response, last week when we talked, we were asked about, can we make tweaks to the scaffolding plan? This going to a full virtual from tweaks to a scaffolding plan is a huge leap. And what you're saying to me is things can change day in and day out, so we can't make any decisions. And I don't think that's the tone this board can take.
Well, and I'm not saying that to you, so please don't put words in my mouth. That's not what I'm saying.
Hearing.
Well, that's what you're hearing. That's a different statement. That's you hearing it. That's not what I said.
Right, so I have surveying the room at the moment. I have Ms. Denon, Mr. Updegrove, and Ms. McWhorter.
I'm mine up.
And we'll add Ms. Steeroff to that.
So just a couple of questions, basically on supplies and those types of things. As of now, are we confident if we don't go virtual? Are we confident that we're going to have enough PPE, cleaning supplies, staff to do it, bus drivers to pick up kids, and teachers in the classroom? What is our confidence level if we decide to go to keep with this some type of a scaffolding plan? Based on all the data that we have, I know that there was some concern that some things were back ordered. So what is the level of comfort with that right now? Forget about the statistics of COVID going up and all that. What is the level of comfort that we're going to have that in place?
I think Mrs. Denon, I'm going to ask each one of the specialized areas to respond to that question, because I think it's based upon transportation, operations, and all those. So Mr. Drescher, do you want to start?
Sure, I could start. Good evening, everybody.
What I can tell you from our standpoint is we are still waiting on some disinfectant. We have disinfectant in stock. And when we get our disinfectant, I'm fairly confident we'll have enough to last us into the next year. And what I'm being told by the suppliers is that that back order, if you will, that is not out there for anybody to get their hands on will be replenished in the meantime. And so when we get close to exhausting our supply, there should be more supply available for us to purchase.
Ms. Richards, do you want to reply next?
Certainly. Good evening. As far as the staff goes, the number that you saw on the screen tonight has already increased by, that I'm aware of, by 3. That we haven't had a chance even to put on our list or speak to. But it is very much a concern of ours. We are concerned that we won't have certified teachers in the areas where we need them, because some of those special areas like special ed, of course, the math, the sciences, those are difficult to fill to begin with. It is a concern. We're certainly going to use our TPEs where we can. However, those TPEs aren't certified in a lot of those areas. Can we use them as substitutes? Yes. But I think what our goal is certainly to get the certified teachers in there that we can possibly get. I think some of them are waiting to see what is going to happen. They didn't know about the scaffolding plan. They were not aware of what was going to be presented tonight. So I think they're just sitting and waiting. Out of those 39 staff members, of course, the 12 that already had their information in that we knew about, the others, we have paperwork for 4 of them that they already gave us, making the plans to proceed with their leaves. The others are waiting, but I can predict almost that we will be inundated with paperwork by the beginning of next week. We give them options of what they can do because, you know, they're very, very nervous about coming back to the classroom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And finally, Mrs. Batten, would you like to provide an update?
Sure. We have our drivers meeting next Wednesday, and we have a few drivers that will not be coming back. We have some aides that will not be coming back because of their age and the fear that they may get COVID. The buses they've all been done into 2 databases. We've worked every day for hours and hours and hours to get these databases ready for a hybrid or for a regular return to school. The main issue is the amount of students that are rostered on each bus. So we have anywhere from 35 to 55 or 60 students rostered on each bus. With the PDE and the DOH guidelines for transportation, they want the 2 seats behind the drivers empty. And so in some scenarios, there's going to be 3 to a seat, and the students are going to have assigned seats. They're going to enter and walk straight back to the back of the bus in the morning. And, you know, siblings are going to sit together. The buses will be cleaned between the runs. They will be cleaned after the morning run and after the PM run. However, that's still, you know, allowing all of the parents to take the temperatures, make sure the kids' hands are washed, and make sure the students each have a mask in order to enter the bus. That's putting a lot of responsibility on the parents, which, you know, is the drivers I know are very fearful. So not really sure what's going to happen, but we're working towards whatever the case may be. We're going to be ready to rock and roll.
Okay. So in terms of, I think you touched on it, Mr. Stout, in terms of the Chromebooks, we're still waiting for some Chromebooks. So if the option ends up being virtual, and those students, we don't get those Chromebooks in time, we have the backup plan with using other devices, making sure that every child has a device, or won't we be able to guarantee that?
We are working with the current devices we have, such as iPads and Windows-based laptops, to potentially repurpose those. So that's why we wanted to collect the data in the survey to see where we were with those numbers, to really reach out, because there are families within the districts who don't need devices because they have access. So it is definitely something that we want to look at closely and utilize what we have in stock, because some of it is leased equipment and we're still going to have it. So the goal, and from a management perspective from the technology department, is a Chromebook is so much easier to manage than a Windows-based device, because this device here is assigned to me and I need to have this device. A Chromebook can be given, I could have a Chromebook here, I could give it to you to log in. Mr. Foos could log in. It's not directly assigned to a particular student because it's not imaged for that purpose. So from the efficiency use, we're hoping to get them in as soon as possible, but again, it's not something that we're feeling overly confident about, but we do have devices that can be repurposed, because we proactively, before the COVID scenario was happening, we were putting Chromebooks in the hands of other students, and those were already ordered, to the point that I shared in that technology slide, that the IT department has been distributing Chromebooks to different grade levels now. So we're doing that, and some of those students already would have had Windows-based laptops because they were in existence, so they can be repurposed.
And what about the equipment that we need for the synchronous learning with the teachers in the classroom? How are we with that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And as you heard from Mr. Hagee, that we looked at the classroom instruction in general, and thinking about the resources that are in a classroom with the smart projector technology and the laptop with the webcam and the ability that happens there. We're thinking that based upon feedback, there are numerous things that we already have in existence. The webcams that are in the world are very much back-ordered. But as you can see through this whole process, we're all functioning with the laptop that we have, and it's very useful. So what we have looked at is a specific tablet, and I talked about this in the last presentation, and this tablet allows you to write on it that shows the image on the laptop, but then it projects on the screen. So it makes the teacher, or allows the teacher, to be efficient in what they do. Yeah, Dr. Ben pulled it up there. It's on the bottom right-hand corner. They're about $80 a piece, and I was playing with one over the weekend and kind of experimenting with them, but it gives teachers some flexibility of how they provide the instruction. But as we have utilized the services of Google Classroom and some of those virtual components, a lot of teachers are using those strategies and techniques already to help support them.
Right now I have to talk down. Okay, thank you. I was just trying to mute while you were talking and I got it too late. My other question, so the other question I have, and I don't know if anybody can really answer this, but obviously, the board, once the agenda came out, there's been hundreds of emails of parents begging us, literally begging us not to do the virtual option. And then other parents just as strongly saying, please, please go virtual. So I think my biggest concern is for the parents who have special ed children. And I think that we did make a good presentation with how we're gonna deal with that. And we really have to cater to their, cater maybe not be the best word, but we really have to worry about their needs, because those parents it's just not a child care issue with them. So I think that we have a plan, and it seems like we're addressing that.
Ms. Dennett, I want to make sure it's clear to everyone on that point. Again, the IEP team meets and works with the parent to determine the instructional method that is going to best meet the needs of the children. As Mrs. Torch has stated previously, and with a little bit on the slide, one of the benefits of having our teachers report those children that it is not appropriate for them to be served virtually will be because it's such a small number, typically that class size and or the services, sometimes a one-on-one, they would be able to get services at the school environment to meet their needs. It also would allow us, for those who have to be more hands-on, to do a better job of drilling down further and getting even a better PPE equipment for those teachers that have to actually do direct contact and close proximity to meet the needs of certain students who have severe disabilities. So this actually will help support us even more in doing that for those children.
Okay, and my last question is, obviously when I look through the emails, and again, I didn't get to read through every single one, but I tried to like skim and see. Obviously, this is if we decide to go all virtual, this is going to be the biggest hardship on parents who have elementary children, and they really cannot be sitting with them all day. And I think that if you have a K through 3, I don't see how this would work with the parent not really, obviously being there with them for childcare. Somebody needs to be in that house, whether you're working virtually or you have to go to a job. So I know there's been some childcares that have closed in the community, and obviously there are risks associating with keeping children home. It's that one-to-one for those children who are in at-risk homes. And there are risks with, some mental things and depression. And I did see, and I was happy to see that we're going to continue to reach out to those children, and there could be some Zoom or even bringing them into the classroom. So I was really happy to see that, because that is one major concern I had about virtual. So I guess the last concern, and I understand that this is not our responsibility, but I do feel as a school board member and somebody who represents children and parents in this community, if we go all virtual, and I'm sure you've thought about it, but I guess I need some type of answer. Is there childcare in this community that would be accessible for parents, especially parents who were not going to be able to afford a childcare? I mean, they're planning on their children being in school every day, and they're at work or doing, whether it's home or whatever. So how are we going to answer to those parents who are like, what's going to be the answer to them? Because that to me is where I'm really, really struggling. I know intuitively the safest thing is to keep the kids home. And I'm hoping that if we do this, and if enough surrounding schools do this, that maybe it won't be 9 weeks. Maybe we can start slowly bringing them back after 4 weeks. That's kind of my hope. But in that time period, what are we doing? We know a daycare has closed. We do know that the Y provides daycare, and it's provided on an income based, but what about, have we thought about the rest of the community, I guess is my question, because that's the thing that's really kind of bothering me and that I'm worried about.
Okay, I will answer that question. I have been working directly with the Y, and the Y has been preparing to support schools in the I guess the tri-state area of Pennsylvania where they work, and they are willing to come into our buildings. We currently have them in, I believe, New Hanover, Boyertown Elementary, Washington Elementary, and those are the 3 right now. And we would also support Earl Elementary School. So they are looking to see what the need might be should the school district go virtual with regards to the parents needing childcare, and be prepared to set up full day care within our buildings, where they're currently renting space.
Okay, thank you. That actually makes me feel a lot better. So thank you. Those were all
They are waiting on us to, as Ms. Torsia said, because they have to recall staff as part of this planning process, as well as there are some other strategies that we have shared with them that, depending on what happens, and also working through our staffing allocation that Ms. Torsia has also been working with them on as possible viable options with regards to the number of people who may or may not need it. There's also been conversation about redirecting some resources. So for example, we spend $5 to $6 million a year on transportation, but you will probably capture some savings from that, and there's an opportunity to possibly redirect some of that money during that period of time to support ramping up with. So these are just some of the conversations that have been happening, because we absolutely recognize that is a big hurdle and a big challenge that exists with regards to our community and our families. So that has been a significant part of the conversation and trying to find solutions to offer. The reality is, and just to be transparent, there is no perfect solution to how to address the COVID-19. There is no perfect solution to the child care that's going to satisfy everybody. But I would want to go on record and publicly say there have been hours of conversation spent, and they have been a very willing partner who's open to trying to be creative in addressing this issue. Once we know the need, then it gets down to the nitty-gritty of actually building it to see how many of those needs can be met. So they're just waiting right now to hear from what the need will look like, and then try to build capacity with their staff, and or if we have staff available to deploy also to work alongside them.
I'm going to get to the rest of the people in our queue, but I think one distinction that, or one clarification that is probably necessary before we move on too far. For many people hearing that there might be the possibility of childcare options in our buildings, the immediate question that comes to mind is, how can they operate in a space that we're saying we can't? So perhaps it's worth explaining the difference between what they would be responsible for or capable of versus any decision-making on our behalf.
So the Y has their own safety care or their health and safety plan that they had to submit in order to utilize our building for their summer camp. So they are responsible for cleaning their spaces, making sure that high-touch areas are, constantly wiped down. They also would be spreading out with having either 1 or 2 adults to a group of 15, which would be completely different than what we would be doing within a classroom should students be, in our classes, because our teachers have caseloads or class loads of 25 and less, and we don't necessarily have the same staffing to support, breaking them up into separate groups, nor do we have the space if we have all the students returned. So what the Y has been doing is, like I said, they have been staffing so that they can, separate their groups. If we don't have students in our buildings, obviously we have a lot of space for the Y to be able to spread out and for them to utilize their staff in that way. I know that Mr. Rohn is working now to identify space should, we go to a virtual model, so that there would be space allocated for the Y. The Y also has a, yes,
yeah,
Dr. Bedden?
Just want to let you know, he just asked to be pulled over to speak, so while you're going, I'll find him and pull him over to speak to what you just mentioned.
Okay. The Y does have they actually put a brochure together and did send it out so that they have something to provide to families as far as what they're doing. And one of the biggest responsibilities that they are going to be doing is supporting students while they're in virtual classrooms. They have breaks, they're requiring masks, they're doing temperature checks, they're doing all the things that we potentially couldn't do in comparison to the numbers that they have, and then the numbers that we would have if all students returned, because obviously we would be filling our elementary classrooms to capacity.
Mr. Rowan is in, Mary Beth, whenever you want to speak.
Okay. I think I'll let Mr. Rowan chime in right here.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay. So with at New Hanover, For those of you that have been there, we have an upper and a lower hallway. I do have the ability to move most of my teachers down to the lower hallway, which would free open about 5 or 6 rooms up in the upper hallway. Currently, the Y Care uses our cafeteria for before school and after school, and then also sometimes our gymnasium. So with those extra rooms available, it is possible, provided that they have the adults to supervise, it is possible to socially distance at New Hanover using those particular areas. We also have a double room, which is in between the 2 hallways that could also be used. So I have been thinking about it. Mrs. Torsha had mentioned about the Y Care needing to kind of expand, and so I have been working on a plan to allow that should this virtual option be adopted by the board.
In addition to what Mr. Rome was sharing, as I was working with the Y, we also talked about the possibility of staff from CRES that support students potentially, working for the Y, perhaps them picking them up if we wouldn't be able to employ all of them, so that there would be extra hands if they needed them, if they didn't have enough people to be able to bring back from furlough. With having, again, I'm trying to think outside of the box and prepare for anything. As I was thinking with the Y in a meeting, I suggested that, well, if we do have our students within the building and we would have a student who receives some type of service, that person may still be in that building to be able to support that student, so that we can make sure that kids are getting what they need during the day as well. Children that are receiving free and reduced lunch, if we were to go virtual, we were still going to do those grab and go bags. Those children that would be in Y Care would then be set up with their lunches. So it would be very similar to, kids that were getting the grab and goes for the week. So I think we would be able to work cooperatively with them to make sure most of their needs are met, as well as, the instructional piece, but as well as feeding. And if students, do qualify for a free and reduced lunch and breakfast, and they would also be, given that meal as well. So they, be in that building. We were also looking at making sure that we had their program in centralized buildings. So if we needed to move in order to, support families, then that's what we would consider doing as well.
In effect, the Y would take the place of the parents and help the kids with their virtual learning. Is that what I'm expecting to hear?
That is what the Y is proposing that they will do, and that's what they have on their brochure.
So they'll take the place of individual care that each parent would give their own child. Skeptical is written all over my face, correct?
I thought it was important to try to address that before we move too far on. I do have in the queue Mr. Updegrove, Ms. McWhirter, Ms. Deeroff, and Ms. Nyman. So Mr. Updegrove. Yeah.
Okay, I was looking at this as far as the teachers who don't want to come in for safety reasons. Last night at the BCTC meeting that we had up in Ole, the 2 campuses up there, the teachers are all coming in to teach. There is no calling off sick or anything like that. They want to come in and teach the kids that we're going to be sending there, hopefully. And if we can't send them, they said they will actually supply transportation to come down from up there to pick the kids up, to give them the education that they want. And I think that's what we are entitled to do. give these kids the education that they're going to need to keep going in life. It's unbelievable how it can be on one realm and then the opposite here. I don't understand it. We have went through safety issues up there. They've done everything, the door handles, you know, from the minute you walk in, keeping everybody separated. Safety is their concern too. It's priority, actually, in a sense. But the education part of teaching those trade skill kids down the road is so important too. And it starts off at kindergarten. We got to teach these kids, and we can't teach them at home. That elementary teaching at home is not going to work. I talked to a lot of people, school teachers. They said it will not work at home.
I do want to clarify something, Mr. Foose, because I don't want that to be the false perception. We need to be clear that teachers have a standard that they meet. So the ones that are listed will qualify for leave. So to say something like they don't want to teach our kids, I think would be not a good representation. They have rights based on their own health circumstances that they can qualify for, just like their drivers who are making the same requests. So I want to be careful that we don't label it as they don't make it seem like they don't want to teach our kids. That's not the message that I want our community to walk away with. Additionally, they may have larger size classrooms at the BCTC. They may have a better staff to student ratio than we do. So just a blanket comparison is not a good one. I just got, for example, a communication sent to me, Ole Valley and Schuylkill Valley just went full virtual. So other people are making the decision. It's your situation that you're dealing with. They may not have the age or other mitigating health circumstances within our staff that we may have, that our staff qualify for. So I want to be careful that we don't label it as our staff don't want to. The makeup of the population in each individual's case, they don't, as Mr. Sultanic said last week, and Bonnie is on the phone, they don't just get to say, I don't want to come because I'm scared. That's not the standard. So I want to be careful that we don't give the public that perception and make them think that our teachers don't want to teach our children. That would be kind of a misrepresentation of the situation. The Family First Corona's Care Act has 6 areas that people can get leave based upon, and then you have your normal other things that people have put in for, like the 12 before that happened. So I just want to be careful. I don't know if Bonnie wants to say anything, but there's a process that they go through, and if they qualify, we have to grant it.
I'm happy to answer any specific questions anyone has regarding leave. Just go ahead and pose them as they come.
Bonnie, if I may say something before to Mr. Updegrove's statement. Dr. Ben, thank you, because that's very true, because I think every teacher that I've talked to, that we've talked to, has indicated to say firsthand, I want to teach. I want to teach our kids. That is, the fact that they are saying, I don't want to come back is nothing that has been said. That they've been sincerely saying, I want to teach our kids. And the underlying reasons for not coming back is their own health or the health of a spouse or a loved one at home. So it's the reasons that they're giving are certainly qualifying for a leave that they are asking about. So I thank you, Dr. Bennett, for clearing that up. But I also wanted to speak to that. The teachers are not just because they're scared. They have really qualifying reasons for possibly not being able to come back to the classroom. So I'm sorry, Bonnie, go ahead if they have any other questions.
Anything I can answer for anyone? I'll be here, let me know if I can help with anything.
I was wondering if we could get clarification on one thing that was just discussed. This isn't necessarily a legal question. This is more for just the BCTC in general. So for our students that currently utilize their services and take classes up there, what impact would a potential move to virtual have on their ability to attend?
We are planning on transporting our BCTC students. Like Mr. Updegrove did say, that instruction is just as critical as the instruction that they receive within BASH, but it is more hands-on and it is the real world. And they would have to be working as plumbers or heaters in construction or landscaping and wearing masks and being able to do their job socially distancing, in a pandemic right now. So we do believe that that is invaluable, and we are working with transportation to make sure that we can transport those career students to that school.
And just on another note too, that the BCTC, Mr. Updegrove, I'm sure they probably shared with you the different plans they have for their safety mitigations. They have a full return plan, they have a hybrid plan, and they have a virtual plan as well if so dictates. So they're already putting proactive measures in place depending on what the status of the community and decisions around them are as well.
Thank you. I have, sorry, Mr. Updegrove, did you have anything else? Good, okay. I have Ms. McWhirter, followed by Ms. Steeroff, Ms. Nyman, and then Ms. Hogan.
All right. So a lot of my questions were asked. So we already know that we're low on teachers, and possibly low on bus drivers. What have we heard from CRES with regards to support staff? Do we know anything there? Like, are we having them all come back?
I would let Mrs. Richards speak to that if she has information on CRES.
We talked to Joe, who's in charge of CRES, and it seems like he has not heard anything from his staff that they're not coming back. He's kind of waiting for us for direction to give him a number as far as, we're going to have all our paras come back, which we are. We are planning for them all to come back, and probably all of our paraprofessional staff. So I'm going to be talking to him probably tomorrow morning, but he has not mentioned anything. They did have some staff members that have resigned for various reasons, but they're planning on fully staffing us at Boyertown, so I think we'll be good to go with his staff the way it sounds.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're already low on teachers, on bus drivers, custodians, it's iffy. And then substitutes, we don't really have that many so far. Can Mrs. Richards address that? How many subs do we have? Do we have enough subs?
Well, that's something I've talked to the other HR staff about since I wasn't here last year, but I have made a note to myself. Heather and I have talked about it last week already. We wanted to reach out to all our subs, even though they're ongoing. It's revolving every year that they just automatically become on our list. But I think tomorrow, I made a note already, like I said to myself, I'm going to reach out to all of our substitutes just to confirm that they will be subbing for our district this school year. That way we have a solid list of those that are planning to come back. And if they're not, at least we have that confirmation that we have an idea of who is planning to be here or not. So we'll have more of a confirmed list. I'm going to be asking them to confirm that no later than Wednesday of next week.
And Ms. McWhirter, if you remember, when we reviewed the weekly report is going out to the board, there's a line item about subs because, again, everybody's going to be competing for them now. When you had, like I said, one other colleague in a meeting today said a larger district than ours, he has 100 people in the pipeline that are presumed valid PreK leave requests in his district, and another one said he had 50 in his school district. So subs are going to be in high demand.
All right. We've hit on families who need both parents working and special ed. We've talked about food. And I just want to comment that we don't know people's personal reasons for not being able to teach or not teach or sending their kids to virtual or not. So I just don't want to be judgmental there. I think it's better to go with a scaffolded plan, but safety is most important to me. And I think we have to look at the data. And I guess one other question that I would have is, if we went with the scaffolded plan, what type of numbers would make us go back? What type of data with regards to how many teachers we have, maybe how many people are in quarantine, what the numbers are in the county and both Berks and Montgomery? What kind of numbers are we looking at that would make us need to go to a virtual if we started in a scaffolded situation?
One of the things that I said during the presentation is that is a workshop conversation the board has to have. One of the things that has changed, which is what we were pointing out, the state devised a red, yellow, green, and honestly, if you look at the data numbers, we're no longer in the standard that they gave to meet green, if they were still going by it. If you look at the current data numbers, we should not be labeled as green, what they rolled out initially. And correct. If you recall, the governor has decided to step back and let that be a local decision rather than them driving it, unless it becomes, I guess, a significant change. Right now, we're in the watch list. The only confirmation we have is that they're still using the 5% metric at the state level. And again, got that confirmed also by one of the medical doctors who's also a county official about the fact that, I mean, if you can get a 5% or less rate consistent, you are showing that you're suppressing and controlling the virus spread. When it gets above that, that is a standard that they have talked about. Again, there are other metrics the board could use. They could look at the number of new cases that are happening. But what is consistent is that they say schools' decisions have to factor in what's happening in your community, because schools are a microcosm of the community. What is consistent also is the conversation around the language that a lot of the information they're getting is new now about the impact with children, that in some ways they're admitting they were wrong early on, and recognizing that because schools closed so quickly and early on in the onset of the COVID-19, that is a different data point that they're finding, that they're actually going through and developing some trend data to understand what that means and what it doesn't mean on the impact of the community. It is absolutely still true that the severity of the virus is not as severe with younger children. They have different data now for 10 and older and its impact on it, but they have been very clear. Children can transmit it to the adult population though. And that's the other piece that we're dealing with.
Right.
But it really does seem to be some need for a local decision to get some clarity of how you're going to move back and forth so you don't get what's happening now. The kind of everybody being frustrated. What is the decision-making process so that everyone knows what it's going to be? But it's challenging. Most comments that we get, again, in the superintendent, there's a lot of frustration with the inconsistency and the lack of guidance on the health aspect, that the lack thereof coming out of Harrisburg. And we are at a disadvantage in Berks. We don't have a health department. So I have to depend on the meetings in Montgomery County or reaching out to Chester or Berks County health officials, where they have health department officials in their locality. We don't.
Correct. One last question. I don't know how well you can answer this or not. Actually, probably two more questions, but that's schools that have reopened successfully, either here in the US or in other countries. And I know you said that we have to look at our community, but ones that have opened successfully and those that haven't opened successfully, do we know some of the characteristics or numbers that they were starting with, that they were looking at, and characteristics of the community that made it happen?
Sorry, I was talking, I was muted. Actually, we still keep trying to figure out what that is. But one thing is consistent that we found, and again, the physician said it again, it's the level of the virus spread in the community is one of the biggest factors that they're finding as a constant in the ones that have been successful. The issue with the positive cases, the Indiana high school started school one day and they had a positive case. We had a positive case in a neighboring district, but that was traced to a community event finally. So it wasn't necessarily ultimately that the kids, when they were in school, that it was the issue. It was an event that happened in the community and someone was positive who brought it to school. So again, there's connection to the community again. What they are saying though, the schools that have the ability to effectively implement a lot of the mitigation strategies, that is ultimately becoming a lot of what is they're finding to be the successful reasons that they're having success with the mitigation strategies. They talk about the hygiene and the washing of the hands, those types of things. The riding of the bus, that's one big question. Our challenge is that we have a large ridership, where some districts are able to actually do. I saw one demonstration where they literally could put one kid to a seat and could meet the needs of their community. One of the Montco schools is able to do that, and they say they're going to do it. That's a challenge. The other thing they say that we need to think about also is the entry to school guidelines. The policies and requiring sick kids and teachers to stay home. We have that in place. So that is a positive strategy that we put in place. Obviously, we haven't had to test it yet because we haven't started. They talk about the mask policies. Again, no matter where you go, that is one of the best mitigation strategies. But as you know, there's mixed feelings about that situation. But if you are maintaining and meeting the mask requirements, that is going to be one of the successful traits in schools. We also know that that has to have mask breaks and other opportunities, because it's going to be very hard to ask a third grader to keep their mask on all the time. I mean, we have challenges even as adults in the office and have to remind ourselves, the social distancing. Again, 6 feet is better. They say now, even CDC now has backed off a little bit and accepted 3 feet. But 6 feet is better or more, obviously. But that's a big challenge in schools for us to meet that guideline. Wilson is in a position, for example, that they are able to say that we're going to limit their classes to 21. But they also didn't have the financial challenges coming into the past 2 years that we've had. He was able to hire 10 more teachers to do that. It took him 10 more teachers to do that. For us, that would be like $1 million that we'd have to come up with. What do you do when someone gets sick? We have isolation rooms that we're developing our plan. That is one of the things that they say that makes it successful. So we have pieces of it, but we have challenges. The social distancing in the classroom, the bus transportation is a challenge. And it's all going to come down to also the ability to sanitize, both personal sanitation and hygiene strategies, and also our ability to be responsive in cleaning of our surfaces. Our big other challenge that we're not going to do well in is because of our older buildings is the air circulation. So we're going to have to do things with natural air that we've incorporated in our plan. But if the weather doesn't permit, that becomes an inhibiting and limiting factor. But that's a successful strategy. Of course, we're implementing the lunch and service routines with staggered cafeteria times and or staggered seating in our classrooms. But that's going to add more cleaning expectation. We're trying to change the recess protocols with small groups. That is a successful strategy. So we have a lot of them that we've been trying to build in, but there are a lot of things that we can't. But our community issue, again, I just checked it, is now up to 5.7. With the 7.0 and the 8.4, we're trending in the wrong direction with regards to our positivity rate and an increase in cases. So.
Okay. Do we know Montgomery County's rate?
3 point something.
Oh, wow.
They're trending lower.
Are they still are they increasing as well, or have they been steady?
No, they've been steady. She sent their report to me today. They're actually doing better than Berks. We're like 2-point-something percentage point higher than them. And in fact, they just sent me the updated report this evening. And so they're pleased with where they are trending right now, but we're not having the same success in Berks. And they're more densely, highly populated than we are.
All right. Okay, thank you. I'm done.
All right, next I have Ms. Deeroff.
Okay, I've been making notes. I hope I don't forget anything. When we had the presentation before, I thought there was talk about eating in a classroom, and now we're talking about the cafeteria.
No, we said both, Ms. Deeroff, because the high school and secondary can't eat in the classroom, just too many students. You said both strategies would be used.
Okay. First, I want to thank Mr. Hagman for his presentation, but I really would like to see one. I'm a visual person. I would really like to see how that looks. Him telling me was great, and I got a better perception of what's going on, but I still would like to see a real live demonstration, and the board could be the children. Okay, most of the emails we've been getting, I think the parents are upset, and rightly so, because things keep changing just when they had everything set to go back to school. Now we're bringing this up again. And did the survey we did, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we have a question on there about whether parents would be driving the children and who would need transportation? Mr. Stout?
Yeah, it did have that, Mrs. Deeroff.
Did we get an answer on that? I'm sorry.
We, for the purposes of this presentation tonight, we did not compile that information. I certainly can provide that information compiled for the board.
Okay.
It actually, Mrs. Deeroff, it actually had every scenario. Every student has the ability to have transportation, but really it was all the scenarios if they were going to access transportation. And we even drilled down to from school to school, and if they were, the parents were going to do pick up and drop off either way.
Okay, thank you. I knew they all were entitled to it. The other thing, and I have to say this because I believe in free enterprise, it seems odd to me that the Y could use a lot of our classrooms. I guess the virus doesn't get the children that are in daycare because we seem to be having a problem with it. But I would think that we would offer that same, if we're going to go that route at any time, I would hope that we would offer that to any daycare. I don't think we should cater to one. I think anybody that will want to use our facility, it should be available to them. And I don't know if that has been done. But if we would go entirely virtual, then I think we would probably not have to use some of our staff. At least I wouldn't see why. So there's a lot of things that I feel pieces are missing yet. And once again, I'm disappointed that we would lose some of our teachers, but I guess the question comes out, why is this last minute? Why did they wait so long if they have health issues and so forth? And I'm not taking that lightly. I feel bad, but it seems like it's hitting us all at the last minute, and you're I feel rushed to make a decision when we made decisions prior to this.
Actually, Ms. Deeroff, if you remember, Ms. Richards said that many of the staff was waiting to find out what model we would be in. So
yes, I remember that. I'm just disappointed. I can be disappointed.
I wasn't judging your feeling of disappointment. I was trying to answer your question of why we're just getting the numbers, and that was part of also the questions we asked to find out, how many staff were this involved. And that was one of the things that the BAEA decided to do a survey to reach out to their staff, because we were trying to get a feel for what does this mean for our staff once the model was adopted. I'm not speaking to you being surprised or disappointed. I was trying to just answer the question of why we're just getting that information more so.
Well, when I read some of the letters I got from my constituents and anybody in the district, it breaks my heart because they're left on a lurch at the last minute. And they don't know what to do or how to do it. So it's very disheartening, the whole thing that this is before us again. And I realize things change, and
I would hope that one of the things that you would appreciate, to your point, is once we got the information, that's why we thought it was important to share it with you, so it wouldn't be last minute. We're talking about a week's time, and because when we saw the data, it was that vitally important to get it to the board, so it wouldn't be totally last minute. So that's why we're here. That's exactly the point why we felt it was important for you all to see what the current status is of what we're facing, both logistic-wise as well as also the health and safety data that continues to change in a negative direction.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Right, next, I have Ms. Nyman and then Ms. Hogan.
Okay, thank you. Just to say, everybody is essential to this district. There isn't a one person in this district that isn't essential. However, that being said, I have a lot of concerns. The safety and risks, not just of the personnel coming back, but the safety and the risks of each student that is at home, that is having mental, physical abuse of any type. We lose one student because they're home and they're being abused. That's one student too many. Yes, it's one student too many, or one person in this district if they get the COVID. But we have no protection out there for the students that are at home that normally, yes, the bus drivers would be the first, but the teachers would be the second person they would see that they could confide in and say, I need help. I'm being physically, verbally abused at home. And most of our teachers know the signs and know what to look for. They're not getting that right now. They didn't get that the last 3 months of school. So there's a lot more at stake in all of this. If we would go the full virtual, we'd be going back the beginning of November. That's the beginning of the cold and flu season, so we won't be going back then either. Because then we won't know if it's a cold, if it's the flu, or if it's COVID. So now we have more into the whole thing. So I don't see us going back at that point either. Our students will be so far behind on their education. They're 3 months behind from this past year because that what we had then was a farce. Our students didn't learn. And I've heard that from so many parents. And yes, you said about bringing the students in with IEPs and that. But if you bring them in for their IEP, are you going to keep them there after their IEP lesson is done? Or are you going to send them home? Now we have parents out there who work. And I've heard from a lot. Parents that need the 2 incomes. They can't afford to be home. So now we do this. Yes, you said about the why. However, is the why going to be there, making sure they're on their Zoom and learning? And then you're going to have Johnny or Susie over here making all kinds of noise or carrying on. What kind of education that's going to be? This is a no-win situation. Childcare, I don't see how they're going to be able to handle this. I really don't. Even the Y, or even letting any other childcare come into our schools. I don't know how they're going to handle this and be successful for our students' education. And I'm really concerned about the education because we are going to be so far behind. So far behind. So let's go to the seniors. Are they even going to have enough credits to graduate? That's another issue.
Absolutely, that was an emergency order that
Excuse me, I'm talking. Please let me finish. And yes, I know there's an emergency order out there. They'll graduate. That's not what I'm talking about. Are they going to have the credits, the education they're supposed to be getting? Just because we're in a COVID situation right now doesn't mean they get to just graduate in my book. They need that education. They need the credits they're supposed to have. That's very important to me. You said about bringing the life skills back. Are we going to have enough PPE for them, for the students that are the life skills? Are we going to have enough PPE for the paraprofessionals who are going to be handling them? And are we paying for that as the district? That's another big issue. I just don't know that I can go this route. I really feel we need to have our teachers in there teaching the kids. I was not happy with the scaffolding approach, but the people were counting on this. They were counting on having their kids in school so that they can get back to work. This is just a no-win situation that we're in, and it's very important that our teachers get back there and help these students, because it's not just about education, it's about social, emotional. There's so much our kids are not getting. They need that structure. They need that time with their friends, with the teacher. They need that time out of the house. They've been cooped up. And to do anything else other than getting them back there so that at least there's a couple days that they're meeting with the teachers just to get that help. I don't know that I can support a full online course. I just don't know. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Nyman, did you just wanted to share, or did you want us to answer any of your questions?
I was basically sharing, but if you want to answer anything, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to clarify because I didn't want you to feel I cut you off. I was trying to answer, so I just wanted to make sure. So I understand.
Okay. So we'll go to Ms. Hogan and then Ms. McWhorter. And, oh, sorry. So we'll go Ms. Hogan, then Mr. Hemingway, since he has not gone yet, and then Ms. McWhorter.
Thank you, Mr. Foose. So I have a few questions. If we open and we did not have enough substitutes, what would happen? Would classes be combined? Would classes be canceled? Would kids be put in study halls like they were in previous years when we couldn't find enough substitutes? How would that be handled?
Mrs. Hogan, I believe that all of the above that you just mentioned is how it would be handled, because if we wouldn't have an adult to be in front of a class, we would either have to obviously we would be trying to get substitutes, but we typically would be pulling intervention teachers, or we may be pulling a counselor, or we may be pulling a specialist, gym, art, music, etc., and canceling those classes. So we would have to do what we needed to do in order to make sure that classrooms were covered where subject area instruction was taking place.
Okay, so there would be the possibility that we would be putting kids into large groups, larger groups than the 25 or so of the general classroom.
We would absolutely avoid that at all costs, because that would go completely against the health and safety plan that we have put together. What we would be doing is we would be taking teachers who are responsible for supporting students and their needs in a different way, and taking that instruction away from those kids in order for classes to be covered. So if there would be a third grade class that didn't have a teacher, then we would have to be taking staff somewhere else, because we would not be able to take that class and divide it and add more into a classroom if we were back in session with all students in school at the same time, especially at the elementary level.
Okay, so we would be taking teachers, even from like teachers that are servicing like IEPs and things like that. Is that correct?
That could be a potential area if we did not have anyone else to cover that class. Yes, which would not be ideal.
We would have to immediately address a health and safety issue first to trump instruction. By law and our license, we would have to actually make sure that we were addressing a health and safety issue first.
Okay, that makes sense. If we were to lose 40 teachers, what would the level of difficulty be to fill those positions? Because I know from previous, I don't recall if I was on the board or if I was a member of the community watching, but I do remember the whole conversation around how difficult it was to get subs and that our pay was lower. So that was already a challenge previous to this situation. It sounds like it would be incredibly difficult.
Well, I don't know if Heather's on here to speak to.
Well, I can speak to it, Dr. Bedden, because I do have some information that was provided to me. So last year we had a total of—
Hold on 1 second, Mayor Beth, you can finish, but I do want to add before they answer that, what's going to be different in this dynamic is the aggressiveness of people needing them is now magnified even more on top of this, because of the numbers I gave you with some of the data that was coming from our surrounding jurisdictions, with a number of teachers that they have that are actually in the pipeline for FRACA leaves. So that is going to be definitely a mitigating circumstance that's going to be added to it. So go ahead, Mary Beth, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner, can you just—
Go ahead, Mrs.
Sorry, can you just explain what FRACA is, Dr. Bedden?
The family coronas relief, I forgot the whole acronym.
Right, okay, so
Family
it's, right.
First Corona
Relief Act.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Mrs. Torch, I apologize.
No worries. So based upon an active sub list of 129 total subs that we had last year, we statistically had only around 29 who were actually active to be able to sub. So at any given time, if I use the high school, for instance, we could have anywhere from 12 to 14 teachers out on an average daily basis. Of those 29 subs, part of them would go there, or else they wouldn't, because we would have a little bit more latitude to take teachers who would have prep time to cover classes. So yeah, 129 on our list, but 29 were only actively subbing.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I want to double back. When we were talking about pulling or having the possibility of having to pull teachers that, are doing IEP specific things, could that open us up to litigation, or would we be protected from that because of the situation?
I'm sorry, would you repeat your question again? I apologize.
So like if we had to continuously pull teachers that are working specifically with students that have IEPs, and we were not able then to service those IEPs because of the health and safety needs, could that open us up to litigation as far as the IEP, like not servicing those IEPs?
Ms. Young also wanted to chime in. Mary
I
Beth.
think the answer to that is yes, potentially, in the right set of circumstances.
Okay.
100%, I'm sure.
Okay, I appreciate
And
it.
even if we don't get to Ms. Hogan to litigation, typically what ends up happening is we either have compensatory education situations. We obviously end up sometimes having to, Ms. Torsha has the detail staff to do double up on services, which means that I think you end up having to pay extra, Ms. Torsha, for them to work additional to try to catch up and keep us in compliance.
We could be in a situation where we would be responsible for compensatory ed, yes.
Which is costly, yes.
And those are just strategies I was saying that to try to keep from getting to what Ms. Young referred to. Those are some strategies that you end up implementing as a district to try to keep it from going to litigation. So they do have a cost, a factor associated with them, which is everything from extended day, extended year, to other type comp ed rights that we would do to try to mitigate the legal aspect of it and not end up in court, which could be more costly.
And I would just like to add that we would only go with a special area, like a special education teacher at a very last choice. That would never be our first choice. It wouldn't be our second choice. It wouldn't be our third choice. It would be our absolute last choice. And if we would be able to get somebody to come in, shortly after we had to have them cover a class, and that's what we would do. But we definitely do not try to pull special education teachers. But again, we can't have 25 students be unattended.
I understand that, and I appreciate the clarification. How much, as far as if we did move to a full virtual, how much time would parents need to be involved in student learning? I know Mr. Stout had shown us with some of the other cyber issues, it was like 5 hours a day. Is that still what we're looking at?
Mrs. Hogan, there's probably not a blanket answer for that. It might be dependent on the lesson itself. Typically, the younger students obviously need some more support with that process, but it really is more of a combination of synchronous versus asynchronous learning that parent support in any kind of virtual environment or support in general in the home environment is an important component of it. It's not something that can go by the wayside. There needs to be organizational support. There needs to be some academic support that goes along with that as well.
Okay. And then I think this is actually, I have two more questions, and I think they're probably both for you, Mr. Stout. Would classes, so if we move to the virtual reopen, would classes be provided both synchronous and asynchronous to allow flexibility for working parents? Like, could we record them and then parents could catch up with their students when they're available?
Our initial goal with respect to virtual learning, and even if we are in our current mode where we have the BSD virtual, which gives parents, families the opportunity to work in a synchronous way with the schedule that's provided, is really to try to stay as close to the schedule that a student would have, just for many points that have been brought up about the importance of maintaining consistency, maintaining schedules. As we all know, when you fall out of habit of what you're doing, it's difficult to pull back in again. So the goal is to maintain as close to the original schedule, whether it's from the elementary all the way up to the high school. But of course, in individual circumstances, if there are other situations, we would try to identify the situation on a case-by-case basis to support it as appropriate. I think Mr. Hagman had said the same thing as far as he would record some of those opportunities for them to watch, but it's just a matter of making sure that students are being held accountable to the time involved with what their learning would be, and then also whatever kind of corresponding activity or event that would be connected to it.
Okay, understood. So for parents who are working and cannot be in the home during regular school hours, there would be an option, is what you're saying? Or they could reach out.
I would say that that's a collaboration with the individual teacher, the individual building administration to work through those individual cases.
Okay. And then just one more question. So parents that have already chosen the virtual for the 2021 school year, they would not be affected by this change. That come November, or I'm sorry, I guess November 1st, they would still be in virtual.
Are you, Mrs. Hogan, are you referring to BOL?
No, I'm referring to the BASD virtual option.
Yes,
So,
you are correct. We would continue. The goal in any one of these choices really is to try to, because a lot of questions came out from family members. Many of us have been answering questions, again, rightfully so. The goal was to try to stay consistent with whatever the choice would be. And we talked about, dependent on whatever the situation dictates, a positive case in a family certainly would dictate a different situation. If there was something where the mental health components that go along with the individual students are very much at a level of concern and we needed to make modifications, there's so many different variables as we're learning in this decision-making process that allow us the opportunity to create different options. It really comes down to, being flexible, but trying to provide the consistency. So the families that, if we looked at the numbers, I could go back to the slide, but, the hundreds of families that have decided for a BASD virtual, they would stay consistent, because what they would be getting in the BASD virtual under a current model would look virtually identical to the BAS with the virtual program that would be putting in place, with the exception of there would not be students in the brick and mortar classroom.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate it. And that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Hemingway.
Everybody hear me okay? Okay. I'd like to start, I can appreciate the strategy of starting virtual and having a softer opening to the school year. But I have to start off by saying I agree with Ms. Deeroff that I really haven't seen the product yet. I'm also a very visual type person, and I'm hearing about what it is, but I really would like to actually see what we're getting into. We do have kids, as far as the scaffolding program, already set up for this virtual many days out of the week. And I'm hearing through the communities that groups of kids are already planning to get together during their days of instruction. So now we have a gaggle of kids in homes, which I think can lead to some destructive behavior, some dangerous behavior. So that concerns me. All the way down to the child left at home alone with many temptations. And I think that's something that we really need to take into consideration as far as their safety outside of the building in their own homes. Another factor that's concerning me, that I understand that if we were to go full virtual, that we would be forfeiting our after-school activities and our sports. I know, in fact, we have a lot of athletes that are out there already working hard, training. I know we have a music department that is putting in a lot of effort with the anticipation of doing something this fall. To what extent that is, I don't know. To me, that is a very important part of their education experience, and I'm fearful to forfeit that when we have a plan that we were comfortable with as far as scaffolding goes. I would just hate to forfeit those items, because we all know once they're gone, it's hard to get them back. And I would hate to see that to be the new standard. So again, I'm gonna put my my grips in and try to be aggressive as far as keeping the kids in the buildings as safely as we can. So at this point, I'm not going to talk too much longer because it's getting late, and I'll probably get myself in trouble. So at this point, I can't support a full virtual opening.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I do need to address Mr. Hemingway's comment about the sports. We don't forfeit the sports or extracurricular activities. That is a local decision of what to do about your sports or your activities. So going full virtual doesn't forfeit any of that. I just want to make sure that's clear. That is something that is still a local decision and also driven by the leagues that you participate in. So I just want to make sure that's understood.
Mr. Fish, I have a question then.
Dr. Bennett, didn't you yourself say that you felt that that would be sending the wrong message and you wouldn't be in favor of having a sporting program if we went full virtual?
Yeah, but that's still a local decision. That's not forfeiting it.
But it was you who said that you wouldn't support that, correct?
I said I believe it was a bad optic that if we say that we can't be in school, yes. But I just want to be clear that we're not forfeiting. That's something the board would still have to decide on. Just like I don't get to decide this, I don't get to decide that. So I just want to make sure.
Something with you, I don't know if you were able to hear the information that came out from the governor yesterday in his press conference about sports, where he was, and this is only a recommendation, but this is relevant to your discussion, so I wanted to share it with you. He's making a recommendation that there not be sports until 2021. Then the PIAA responded, said they are meeting tomorrow, and they'll have more guidance for you by tomorrow afternoon. So I wanted to make you aware that there is new information that should be coming to you even as soon as tomorrow.
And that was sent, Bonnie, Ms. Young, to all the board members. That is a recommendation, and it is a local decision at this point in time, unless the PIAA or the leagues make a decision. Right now, all the leagues predominantly have voted to delay the start of the season, but not cancel the season.
All right, next I have Ms. McWhirter, Mr. Brophy, Ms. Snyman, and Ms. Steeroff. Oh, okay, sorry. Ms. McWhirter, Ms. Snyman, and Ms. Steeroff.
Mrs. McWhirter is on mute.
I just have one on because it drives me nuts. Okay, so, all right, so we've talked about the fact that we just made this other plan 10 days ago, and we are now revisiting it because of the changes in the metrics in Berks County and our shortage of teachers and possibly bus drivers, as well as custodians and our other possible support staff. I think so that now there's two parts. One is that I think that we as a board need to make decisions about what constitutes when we fully reopen, and what constitutes going to a virtual setting. And I think that parents, they're not going to necessarily appreciate short notice, even shorter notice after school starts, and then we make the decision again that we need to now go to a full virtual. So that's one of the things I'm worrying about. Is it better to start out as a full virtual and then later move into a scaffolded situation, or do we start with a scaffolded and decide with the metrics that I foresee us making about what pushes our decision to go to a full virtual or to go to a full reopen? Is it better to go to a full virtual now or a full virtual later with just a very short period of time of warning? So that's just another thing that I'm thinking about. That's it.
All right, next I have Ms. Snyman and then Ms. Steeroff.
Thank you. I've just sat here thinking, and you said we had about 5,000 people respond to that survey. Well, only about approximately 750 were the total either virtual, BOL, cyber, or homeschool. Does that mean the 4,250 wanted to go back with a scaffolding approach?
Yes, and just so you understand, the respondents were based upon students. So if you're a family of 3, a family of 2, you would have a response for each one. So it wasn't the 5,000 were really should be, from the data perspective, connected to a student. So they're not family. It's an individual student response.
Right.
So.
And I understand that.
Right.
And how many students roughly do we have for the year?
68 something, I believe, 6,900.
Okay. So I think with that in line, you're talking 4,250 students that want to go. I don't know what we're sitting here for. 4,250 is a lot of students.
Should we take a vote on it?
You have an option to consider the recommendation or not. I mean, you're already in your current status that we're in, and if there's no desire to
county down, and you got Birch County a little bit up.
I can't hear what Mr. Updegrove is saying.
There is, Mr. Updegrove is pondering asking to call for the vote. I just wanted to, I don't know that he explicitly called for the vote, but if I would like to say we do have 2 more people in the queue, and I have been refraining because I would also had a couple of questions, but it's certainly your right to call for the vote if that is what you'd like to do.
I'd like to call for a vote.
All right. So we have somebody calling for the vote, which I believe requires a second, or I don't know if it requires a second or if it, okay, so we have a second. I don't know if Ms. Young is
That's a rule of procedure.
Sorry, what was that?
It's not necessarily that you need a first and a second, then it goes to the chair to call to the vote.
Okay.
If you don't want to call to the vote as a majority, then you can continue to your debate.
Okay, so I guess this is where we got mixed around before. So if there is a majority of people who would like to continue the discussion, then we could withhold the call for the vote until that discussion is concluded.
Correct.
So I guess step 1, I'm saying personally, I would like to continue the discussion because I haven't had an opportunity to ask my questions. But if I don't have majority of people who would agree to that, then we would fulfill that call for the vote.
I didn't hear.
So yeah, I guess, can we do a roll call quick to see if we want to continue the discussion?
Certainly. This is a vote to continue discussion. Mrs. Deeroff.
You're on mute.
I'm confused. I thought he called for the vote for the plan. So this is just a vote to continue talking?
Yeah, so procedurally before, I believe that we did not address it the appropriate way. When there's a call for the vote, you can request to continue the discussion, but it requires a majority of the board to agree to continue the discussion.
Correct.
No.
Mrs. Hogan.
Yes, I'd like to continue the discussion.
Mrs. Denon.
Yes, I'd like to continue the discussion.
Mr. Brophy.
No.
Ms. Nyman.
No.
Mrs. McWhirter.
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove.
No.
Mr. Hemingway. I'm sorry, Mr. Hemingway, I didn't hear you.
I think it'd be fair to bring.
He needs to unmute his mic.
I just unmuted.
I know it's getting late, but I would like to be fair to our president to at least make his comments. But I would hope he would use discretion that we don't go around the board again Everyone had the opportunity to make their comments. He's been waiting, and I think he deserves that opportunity to make his points. Again, I just hope that we don't try to work our way around the board again. So I don't know if we can amend this, but I would like to hear what Brandon has to say, Mr. Cruz has to say.
Mr. Hemingway, I believe we're taking a roll call vote as to whether to continue the discussion. And I believe it's either a yes or a no.
Yes.
Mr. Foos?
Yes.
I think we could amend that, though, couldn't we, legal counsel? To amend it to be that, according to what Mr. Hemingway said, only Mr. Foos talk, and then that would be it?
I don't know if we amend on points of procedure motions in order to allow discussion to continue, and it would have to be then a friendly amendment. I don't believe those amendment rules apply to these rules of procedure votes, and I think you've taken a 5-4 vote to allow the discussion to continue at this point.
Yeah, it was a 5-4 vote.
I'd like to suggest, absent an amendment, that I believe everyone's had ample opportunity to weigh in. So is everyone comfortable with if I just ask a couple of questions I had down and then we'll proceed to the vote? Is that fair?
I'm fine with that.
I had a question too, if we're going to continue.
Okay, well, that's what I was just asking. Would you like to make your question quickly, or do you want to go after me, or do you have a preference?
I'll go after you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess the biggest question that remains outstanding to me that I just need a clear answer on is, given the number of leave requests for whatever reason, do we feel comfortable that we're going to be able to fulfill the scaffold plan as intended in a safe way? Because my preference is for that plan. I think that was a great plan, but only if we can do it safely. And I think that's my concern right now is has there been any disruption to our ability to fulfill that plan safely at this time?
Is that a question to us?
Yeah, no, sorry, that's a question.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Foos, I'll respond to that, then maybe Mrs. Richard can chime in if there's anything to add. I mean, obviously, more teachers that do not come back to work certainly compromise the ability for that to happen. And we are, truly every day at the cusp of new information. So how many people came back to, hold on, let's get an echo. How many people have already reported to Human Resources about levels of concern, and how many people might report after this meeting? It's unpredictable. We don't know that. So every teacher that doesn't come back certainly gives us the opportunity to have a more difficult time to meet the needs of our students. And, I don't think there's a direct answer to that because we really don't know the ultimate impact because we don't have exact numbers.
Yes.
Mr. Ludwig, didn't hear your question, Mr. Foos.
Okay, yeah, my question was based on the numbers that we have right now. How do we feel about our ability as a district to carry out the scaffold plan minus, if all of these were to be honored, minus 39 teachers?
The only thing, Mr. Foos, that I can tell you, the board as a whole, is the fact that as the discussion continues tonight, I have received several emails asking for forms. But, so I can just tell you that part, that they are moving forward. Some of the teachers that have already spoken with us have asked for forms to continue the leave process. Now, whether they're going to go through with it and submit those forms, I don't know that. But, it's hard to tell, if they're going to proceed, if we go to the scaffolding approach or online virtual. I can't answer that question. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if we're going to have 10, 15, 20 more people coming to us tomorrow or next week requesting some kind of leave if they qualify for that. It's really hard to say. You know, again, I want to express the fact that the teachers that have talked to us want to teach. They want to teach the students. So, but they have their own health and the health of their loved ones to consider.
Mr. Foose, I would like to share, if you don't mind, to the board. I think it's really important to understand that the teachers care about their students, and they care about Boyertown, and they care about the education that their students get. And they take great pride in that. But that does not mean that they can supersede the needs of their family as far as health and safety is concerned. And for a lot of our teachers, that does come into play, as it would for anyone sitting in this room making this decision. And one of the reasons that it's so difficult, this disease is so difficult, this virus is so difficult, is because there is no right answer. And to me, that means the right answer is safety. And I understand all the things that people are having challenges with, the daycare issues. Those are things that are a problem. But I also believe that Boyertown as a community can figure those things out. I believe that we as a district can figure those things out. And I used a word earlier, and I don't know if the board remembers it, but it's called interdependent. And for the time that the administration and the professional staff have been working on this, there's been an interdependence, and that interdependence has led to a program that is going to provide a great education for our students, my daughter being one of them. And I think it's important to understand that that's where we want to go. Right now, the best course of action is for us to provide that virtually until we can get back to face-to-face with our kids. To the question of will we have the staff to do it, I can't answer that for individual people. I can tell you that the staff really wants to educate kids the best they can. And right now, the sentiment is the best they can is probably in a virtual setting for the safety and the well-being of the staff, of the students, and the community. Because everything that they come in touch with ends up going away from the school and back to the community. So obviously, I'm pretty passionate about that. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
I appreciate the responses. I have one other comment, but I have to say, I'm certainly concerned that we won't be able to meet the needs of the scaffolding plan in a healthy and safe way. However, I don't know that that's being clearly articulated. So I posed the question. I understand it's not there's not an easy answer to it, but as far as the number of staff, the number of students we anticipate or that we would have in our buildings under normal circumstances, down that many teachers, I would think that we would certainly struggle. But I wanted to pose that question to the people who actually carry out the work. The other comment I just wanted to make before I hand it over to Ms. Deeroff is I think this has been stated, but I think it bears repeating, that even going into the school year under a scaffold approach is very subject to change very quickly. And I think I read through every single email we got. It was close to 120, and I read every single one of them, and there were concerns on every side of this issue. I apologize, I probably won't be able to respond to all of them in a very timely manner, so please bear with me on that. But I did read through all of them, and one thing I just want people to be aware of, even if we go into this with the scaffold approach where kids are in school a certain number of days, if there is a quarantine, if there is somebody with symptoms, if there is something from the state level, it can very well be shut down, or your specific circumstances could change. And I think people should start preparing for that. Regardless of if we move to fully virtual, it's clearly decided for you. You have to make those adjustments. But I would not go into the scaffold plan expecting nothing to change. Not because anybody wants things to change, but because all it takes is one case, one quarantine, one classroom quarantining. It can be very disruptive, and I think people just need to be prepared themselves for that, and not anticipate that it will go as smoothly as we would like it to over the full duration. So I just think that's worth making people aware of. Ms. Diroff.
I just have one more question, and I hope I don't come across anymore tonight as being so disrespectful. I try to be respectful to all of you. We have to all work together. So the plan the administration is bringing in tonight is to go all virtual. Is that correct?
Yes, Mrs. Diroff, that is the recommendation that's being made this evening.
Okay, thank you. And are we going to address the sports issue now, or are we going to hold another special meeting for that? I think this should all be together. We touched on it briefly, but we really didn't say what we thought or what we're going to do. And I really think that should be part of the conversation tonight, since it was brought up.
I don't disagree with you, but I believe what Mrs. Young had shared with us is that it sounds like PIAA may be making the decision for schools anyway. But that certainly can be discussion that is had this evening as well, and bring it all together.
Okay, well, I just thought since it was brought up, and I know they're making an announcement tomorrow, but we don't have a decision made at this point what we prefer to do. So that would mean another meeting if we have an option. If you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely do understand what you're saying, and if you would like to make that motion to address the sports as well with the vote, you certainly can.
I think we should. I don't know what anybody else's feelings are, but I think that's very important at this point. Is anybody going to second it? Okay, then I guess it's dead in the water.
I think as was said, I don't think the lack of a second is because of the lack of interest. I think we just don't want to enter into that discussion at this hour tonight. I did have one other board member that was asking to speak. I did request that we get through my comment quickly. I don't like not allowing people to speak. I would ask that this please be kept very brief to like 30 seconds so that we can move to a vote. Ms. Denon. Okay, thank you. So with that, we will proceed with the vote on the motion.
Mr. Foose, can I speak really quickly? I apologize.
No. It's over.
I think we should let people, I think we should have debate and let people speak.
I will literally take 30 seconds.
Never happened.
Can we please keep it to less than 30 seconds?
Yes, we can. I just wanted to say, I did not realize that we would technically be voting. I really thought we'd be tabling this. So one of the things I do want to say is that I think we are putting ourselves at risk of litigation that we can't afford, and that we may be negatively impacting next year's budget, which is already severely negatively impacted by choosing the scaffolding plan. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for being brief. All right, so with that, we will move to the vote on the motion brought forward by Mr. Updegrove that sorry, I don't recall who seconded it. Somebody seconded it. Mr. Brophy. All right.
Okay, should I read the recommended action?
Yes, please.
Based upon the updated data information, the BASD administration, in collaboration with the BAEA, recommends a full virtual start for the first 9 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year. So, Mrs. Diroff. Mrs. Diroff? can you all hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
she's on mute.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Mrs. Diroff, we're taking the vote on the recommended action.
I couldn't hear the question. Sorry, it kept cutting in and out.
Would you like me to repeat the recommended action?
Please.
Based upon the updated data information, the BASD administration, in collaboration with the BAEA, recommends a full virtual start for the first 9 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year. So now I'm asking for your vote, Mrs. Diroff.
The answer is no.
Thank you. Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
Mrs. Denon,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
No.
Ms. Nyman,
No.
Mrs. McWhirter,
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove,
No.
Mr. Hemingway, I'm sorry, Mr. Hemingway, I didn't hear you.
That would be a no.
Mr. Hemingway, could you repeat your vote?
No.
Mr. Foose,
Yes.
motion does not pass. 5-4.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is upcoming meeting dates. The board will be meeting on August 11th, currently scheduled for 7 p.m. And you can also find the rest of our upcoming meetings on the BASD website calendar. So with that, we will motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're adjourned.